The One Piece series has some of the biggest world building in all of fiction, and with that comes an entirely fleshed out fictional history spanning back hundreds of years in incredible detail. Ever since I started making One Piece content in 2015, I have consistently worked within the community to create a One Piece timeline that keeps track of all dates in the series, and today I present to you the definitive complete One Piece timeline spanning all the way back from before the Void Century in ancient times, all the way to present day with the Straw Hats. I spent hundreds of hours on this project, I'm not joking. I painstakingly tracked down every single date from the manga, but the result is the most complete One Piece timeline you will find on the internet. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a long trek through this long One Piece history lesson. The only thing I want to note is that you can also find a written version of this timeline with an easy-to-follow graphic on my website, thelibraryofahara.com. That version is more complete, including things like all characters' birthdays and ages, and also includes citations for every single one of the dates featured on this timeline. So if you're curious as to where the information about a certain date comes from, you can check exactly in which chapter, SBS, or databook said information was mentioned by Oda. Also, obviously, we're only going to be tackling what is the canon One Piece timeline, so no filler or additional non-canon content, and we'll be avoiding any speculation or theory crafting outside of anything that is very much confirmed already. So, are you ready? Let's begin by traveling back in time to the very beginning of the One Piece timeline. The oldest known point in the One Piece timeline is the period of time known as prehistory, during what is known as the very first era, the era of dinosaurs. Over 100 million years ago, the era of dinosaurs begins, as dinosaurs rule the world, populated by many ancient species which hunt in supposedly very bizarre ways. This era lasts for over 100 million years, similarly to our world, until it comes to an end as dinosaurs diminish across the planet, though some species continue to survive. Moving much further ahead in time and much closer to the present, we have the period known as ancient history. Around 5,000 years ago, a tree that would come to be known as the Tree of Omniscience sprouts on what would be called Ohara Island. Around 4,000 years ago, Alubarna Palace is built on Sandy Island and would serve as a historical site for the next 4 millennia in what would be the Alabasta Kingdom. Sometime well over 1,100 years ago, winged hominids, called by some as angels, colonized the moon and found the city of Burka. Their civilization thrives with their advanced technology, and they create the race of androids known as the Karakuri Automata. Still well over 1,100 years ago, due to a lack of natural resources on the moon people leave for the planet below, abandoning the automata, who enter hibernation. The three moon tribes eventually split, going to one day found the settlements of Burka, Skypiea, and Shandora. Moving closer to the actual calendar, to clarify, the One Piece world uses a calendar that is known as the Kaien Reiki, which translates to the Sea Circle calendar. The year zero of this calendar is 1,524 years from the current storyline, making the post-Timeskip take place on the year 1524 of Kaien Reiki. An older calendar called the Tenreiki was also mentioned by Robin in Alabasta, but this seems to precede the current Kaien Reiki and have only been used in even more ancient times. So this is just speculation, but both the Kaien Reiki and Tenreiki calendars use the kanji that are used for the planets Poseidon and Uranus respectively. So maybe there even may have been a third calendar called Meireiki, or Earth calendar, completing the trifecta of the three planes the ancient weapons are named after. But again, this is all speculation, so let's stick to what we actually know. So for the sake of reference, we will be using both the Kaien Reiki year and the number of years ago from the present time in the timeline below, so that you can easily follow along. So after the year 0 of Kaien Reiki, 1,524 years ago, we go to year 402 of Kaien Reiki, or 1,120 years ago. On this year, according to a monolith that Robin found, the city of Shandora, which had been formed by descendants of the Moon People, prospers on Jaya Island. Over 1,000 years ago, the nighttime Minorida elephant Zunisha is born. Around 1,000 years ago, the 1,000-year conflict, a conflict between the Longarm race and the Longleg race, begins and would last for an entire millennia. Sometime well before, over 900 years ago, the kingdom of Dressrosa is founded founded on Dressrosa Island. The Don Quixote dynasty would eventually arise as its leader. Over 900 years ago, the Tontata race sets out to sea to find resources that could not be found in their homeland, but are persecuted by humans, edging them towards extinction. King Don Quixote of Dressrosa offers the Tontata a plan, promising them safety and resources in exchange for labor. The Tontata are, however, exploited and enslaved by King Don Quixote, as they are forced into slavery as part of the era slaves to bring wealth to Dressrosa, enriching the country. This period of time, which began sometime before the Void Century, is known as the Era of Slaves. During this period of time, slaves across the world suffer as cruel tyrants, called the Devils by some, amass wealth and glory at the cost of the slaves suffering beneath them. Around this general period of time prior to the Void Century, certain settlements begin to appear as well. Persecuted by humans, the Fishman and Merman races found Fishman Island at the only place of the seafloor where the rays of the sun reach, being the roots of the colossal sun tree Eve. The Wano country is formed around the shores of the Mount Fuji volcano, and the city of Water 7 is constructed on Zosenjima, or Shipbuilding Island. On the year 600, 924 years ago, the century that would come to be known as the Void Century begins. This time period closes the era of slaves, but suffering of slaves still continues across the world. During this period of time, the Lunaria race, seemingly a descendant of the Moonfolk, thrive on top of the Red Line in a settlement that was called the God Country, for which they commonly came to be known as gods. At this time as well, around 900 years ago towards the start of the century, a certain immense kingdom thrives during this period with its incredibly advanced technology, connecting many countries across the world with ties to the God Country, Fishman Island, the Wano Country, Shandora, Water 7, and many others. This kingdom is said to have been formed by many members of what would be called the D Clan. A colossal robot, later dubbed by scholars as the Iron Giant, is manufactured by this immense kingdom. During this period of the Void Century, King Nerona Imu is born, and Queen Nefertari Lily, the heir of the throne of Alabasta, is also born. This is also around the first instance of the devil fruits existing in the world, rumored by legends to be the incarnations of a certain sea devil, which end up making people's dreams a reality by granting them different evolutions. Slaves and oppressed people begin to idolize and pray to a fictional, cartoonish superhero called the Warrior of Liberation, Nika, as a deity, the sun god, in hopes he could somehow exist, be real, and deliver them liberation. From these dreams, Nika appears upon the world in the form of a mythical Zoan Del fruit, the Hitoitonomi Model Nika, which is eaten by a user who awakens it, earning the nickname of Joy Boy. The Mermaid Princess of Fishman Island is also born and christened as Poseidon, named after a god due to her being recognized by sea kings as their king incarnate due to some unknown reason. A powerful warship is built on the island of Water 7. It is said to have been christened as well with the name of the ancient weapon Pluton, named after a god and said to be capable of wiping out an island in one blast. A weapon christened after the god Uranus also appears upon the world. Alongside Pluton and Poseidon, these three ancient weapons were said to have the capability to destroy the world. The people of Fishman Island also make a promise with Joy Boy involving the colossal Ark Noah and Poseidon's powers. Around the year 668 approximately, around 156 years ago, Amatsuki Toki is born to people from the Wano country abroad. Then later into the Void Century, the Void Century War takes place. A massive conflict takes place between the people of the D clan pertaining to the advanced immense kingdom against an alliance of 20 human kings. The alliance includes King Nerona Imu, Queen of Alabasta Nefertari Lily, who, unbeknownst to her allies, was in fact secretly a D-clan member, King of Dressrosa Don Quixote, and rulers Figureland, J. Garcia, Marcus, Topman, Ethan Barron, Shefford, Man Mayer, among 10 other rulers. The immense kingdom seemingly realizes that they are approaching defeat, so they decide to execute a plan to preserve their ideals. With their allies, the Kosuke clan, they carve information about the kingdom onto indestructible stones. 9 Ryo poneglyphs detailing the true history, among a total of 30 stones, are crafted. The Joy Boy user dies and the Hitoitonomi Model Nika is reborn. It begins to use its will as a zoan fruit to run away from its enemies for the next 800 years in the hope of someday finding a new user once the ancient weapons are reborn. The Allied powers condemn the Buccaneer race due to an action they consider to be a cardinal sin related to the desire of wanting to become Nika. Over the next centuries, they would enslave and persecute them to near extinction for this so-called crime. A prophecy or belief emerges that someday a new Joy Boy user will appear who will guide weapons such as Poseidon and change the world for good by following the instructions and ideals left behind carved on the poneglyphs. This day of change is also referred to by some as the dawn of the world, or the day the world will be turned upside down. Thanks to the help of Nefertari di Lili, the poneglyphs are scattered across the world. Imo believes this to be a mistake by Lili, unaware that she is a D-clan member, but shortly after this event, Lili mysteriously vanishes. Lili's little brother takes the now vacant throne of Alabasta, but is left with a letter from his sister asking to protect a poneglyph the country was entrusted, leading future generations of the royal family to protect the stone in secret in the name of the Dawn. The promise between Joy Boy and the people of Fishman Island cannot be maintained. The people of the island promise to protect the Ark Noah so that their promise may be fulfilled someday once the day of promise arrives and a new Joy Boy will come to guide a new Poseidon, and are entrusted a road poneglyph alongside a poneglyph detailing an apology for breaking the promise. The Koski clan closes the borders of Wano from the rest of the world to protect themselves, their poneglyphs, and the ancient weapon Pluton hidden beneath their land from the external power of the government, awaiting the day a Joy Boy would return. This closing of borders is very literal, as colossal walls are erected around the country to protect it. This results in the country slowly flooding over the following ages due to these walls, forcing constant relocations of its citizens higher up Mount Fuji. Zunisha, who had been a comrade of Joy Boy, had committed a certain grave crime. For this, it is punished to walk the seas until a new Joy Boy can appear upon the world, to then help open the borders of the Wano country with its new commander. The mink isolate themselves on the back of the giant elephant Zunisha and can contact with humans to protect one of the road poneglyphs to wait for the day the dawn of the world comes. The shipwright designer of the battleship Pluton decides to hide its blueprints and pass them down across the generations, should the need arise to build a second Pluton to counter an ancient weapon falling in evil hands. Around 694 or around 130 years ago, Amatsuki Toki uses the power of her devil fruit, the Toki Toki no Mi, to leap 800 years into the future, hoping to see with her own eyes the day someone arises to fulfill the hopes of her people to turn the world upside down. In the downfall of Shandora, Shandora is given a poneglyph with details about Poseidon. The Allied powers attempt to steal this poneglyph, instigating a brutal conflict that results in the downfall of Shandora and the deaths of many of its people. Nonetheless, even in spite of their losses, the people of Shandora are successful in protecting the stone, and the Allied powers are forced to retreat. A golden bell is erected around the stone to signify the pride of the people. However, inevitably, the 20 Allied kingdoms emerge victorious in the Void-centric conflict, and the Immense Kingdom is defeated. The final island of the Grand Line that the road poneglyphs point to, one day later dubbed as Laugh Tale, is left completely abandoned. On the island is left a certain treasure relating in some form to Joy Boy that would one day come to be known as the One Piece. On the year 700 or 824 years ago, the century would come to be known as the Void Century ends, as the Celestial Dragons come to establish a new order in a historical moment that would come to be known as the creation of the world. In the World Government Foundation, the 19 remaining kings, given Lily's disappearance, found the world capital of Marijua on top of the Red Line in place of the god country of the Lunaria. The 19 kings leave their countries and sent to Marijua to become celestial dragons, rewriting history as the gods that have created a new world. Together they found the World Government, an organization of allied countries that controls and rules over the entire world. Afraid of the ideals of the D-clan, the government opts to erase all information and historical records of the past century, resulting in the century of the 600s becoming known as the Void Century, for very few records of it would remain. In the Empty Throne Pledge, an empty throne is built within Pangaea Castle at Marijua, where the 19 kings, Lily having vanished, pledged their swords to never desire that power as their own. This is in truth a ruse to deceive the world, as King Neronaimu takes the throne to become the king of the world, believed to have attained perennial youth thanks to the powers of the Ope Ope no Mi, but opts to vanish from public eye so that none are aware of the devil that rules the world. This marks the beginning of the rule of the world government for the next 800 years. Also around 800 years ago, Enies Lobby is founded over a hole seemingly left behind by an ancient weapon to serve as the government's judiciary island. The Cipher Police is established as the government's secret police force. CP9 is stationed at Enies Lobby, protecting the island for the next 8 centuries. Likely following the effect of the hole left behind by the ancient weapon Enies Lobby was built upon, sea levels rise around the nearby Water 7, causing the island to begin to slowly sink over the next centuries. This would result in the citizens erecting new buildings on top of the older town over time to adapt to the sinking island, turning Water 7 into the capital of water. Also around 800 years ago, with the throne of Dressrosa empty after King Don Quixote ascended to Marijoa, the Riku family rises up as the new rulers of the country. Having discovered the atrocities the Don Quixote clan did to the Tontata, King Riku I prostrates to the Tontata in apology and offers them an opportunity to live in harmony. This gives start to an 800-year-long era of peace for Dressrosa, where its citizens live together with the country's fairies. In an undefined period of several centuries ago, the Empire of Amazon Lily on Nyogashima, Woman Island, closes its borders for men for centuries to come to protect itself. Given the pattern of the other kingdoms closing their borders, this is likely around this time. Also some nondescript centuries ago, the Wano country is assailed by various forces, including the world government. The country is assailed by a colossal dragon, but the samurai Shimotsuki Ryuma slays it over the skies of the flower capital. This scares off the government and other forces from attacking the country, and Ryuma comes to be known as the Blade God, worshipped and enshrined after his death alongside his sword Shusui as a national treasure for his incredible talent. Around 700 years ago, under orders from celestial dragons, a massive bridge is ordered to be built in East Blue through the workforce of slaves. Construction of this bridge would continue for the next 7 centuries, becoming known as the Bridge Country of Tequila Wolf. Around 659 years ago, the ancient giant Ors is born. And around 500 years ago, Ors terrorizes the world as the Country Puller, said to have founded a country of ruffians that he helped build by stealing the very islands he ransacked and dragging them across the seas, which earned him his epithet. His infamy was so haunting that some even believed him to be the devil incarnate once more. However, in that same century, around 500 years ago, Ors gets lost in the Ice Country and ultimately succumbs and dies of frostbite, putting an end to his rule. 462 years ago, the tree fever plague, a disease with a 90% death rate that infects trees and people, spreads and ends up killing around 100,000 people, afflicting the Livnil kingdom in the process. Over the next years, a botanist from South Blue finds a cure to the tree fever during an exploration, putting an end to the spreading plague. 404 years ago, explorer Noland is granted permission to leave Livnil for the Grand Line in a short month-long run. Noland leaves the country of Vera, and later in the day he meets a merchant that sells him a lost Skypian vehicle known as a Waver. Then, between 404 and 402 years ago, Noland enters the Grand Line a second time in another short month-long run. And finally, 402 years ago, Noland enters the Grand Line for the 3rd time, this time embarking on a longer journey. Noland lands on Green Bit, protecting the Tontata from some humans and befriending the tribe, and on May the 12th, Noland lands on Jaya and interrupts a sacrifice ritual intended to stop the spread of a local tree fever, slaying the snake deity Kashigami in the process and earning him the ire of the Shandia. On the next day, May the 13th, after much skepticism, Noland convinces the Shandia that he can cure them and befriends the tribe, saving it in the process. On May the 22nd, having formed a bond of friendship, Calgara shows Noland the city of Shandora and its golden belfry housing the poneglyph, which fascinates Noland. Around June, to protect the island from tree fever, Noland cuts down the sacred trees of the Shandia. Unaware of his actions to save them, the Shandia take this as an offense towards Noland. The explorer and his crew leave Jaya, but they manage to make amends with Calgara and the tribe, promising to one day meet again. Noland returns to Livnil from his voyage and tells his king about the City of Gold that he found. 4 years later, 398 years ago, the gigantic geyser Knock-Up Stream erupts below Jaya and pushes half of the island into the sky, landing next to the sky island Skypiea. The local people of Skypiea invade the island to take possession of the earth there, a rare material in the sky, while the Shandia make a stand to protect their country and their poneglyph, sparking the start of the 400-year-long Sky War. 397 7 years ago, finally given clearance by Marijua to re-enter the Grand Line, Noland departs from Livnil with his king to reach Jaya once again, but the journey proves treacherous due to the incompetence of the king's men. On November the 16th, Noland, the king, and a few surviving soldiers make it to Jaya, but don't find Shandora, as half of the island was shot up into the sky. The king believes Noland duped him all along and sentences him to death. On May of the next year, 396 years ago, Mont Blanc Noland is brought back to Livnil and is executed on charges of lying about the City of Gold, unable to prove the truth. The tale of his life would become famous to North Blue's future generations as the tale of Liar Noland. Around 300 years ago, in the wake of a dream of 66 days, the Germa kingdom becomes a nomad country unable to set foot on their homeland. 210 years ago, the Saint Brice ship departs from the Brice kingdom in South Blue. Some years later, around 202 years ago, the Saint Brice reaches Skypiea but is sentenced to cloud drifting, left stranded to starve on a cloud. Around 200 years ago, Greenbeard becomes inaccessible to the people of Dressrosa due to a school of fighting fish moving by the bridge, making passage too dangerous. Around 200 years ago as well, the Iron Giant incident takes place. The Iron Giant, manufactured in the 7th century by the people of the Void Century, suddenly attacks Marijua, but runs out of power before it can cause any damages. The government asks for it to be disposed of, but scientists, baffled by its advanced technology, hide it away to study its mysterious power source. Exactly 200 years ago, the 1324 Reverie takes place. The Ryugu Kingdom attends the 1324 Reverie in a peace treaty between their species to join the world government. Fishmen are legally treated as normal people again, but even so, discrimination remains rampant across the entire world. For the next 2 centuries, the Ryugu Kingdom would avoid participating in future reveries. Also 200 years ago, the weapons store Arms Shop is opened in Logtown. Around 100 years ago, the properties of amber lead and its poisonous effect on the body by those who come in contact with it are discovered by the government. Affluence in the North Blue amasses great profit and wealth through developing an amber lead industry. While the government has been aware of the white lead's dangers, they keep this a secret from the country's citizens to continue profiting off its wealth, slowly poisoning its citizens due to exposure. Then, over 100 years ago, the giant warrior pirates storm and terrorize the world with their mighty strength. Also, over 100 years ago, Morley is captured and imprisoned in Impel Down. Using the powers of the Oshio Shinomi, she manages to create level 5.5 and break out of the prison without anyone ever figuring out. Also, over 100 years ago, the disease-carrying tick Kestia, the one that, poisoned Nami during Drum Island, is believed to have gone extinct, though unknown to biologists, some rare specimens have survived in select locations. 113 years ago, the nun Carmel begins trafficking children as the orphan seller Mountain Hag. 102 years ago, Dory and Bragi, captains of the giant warrior pirates, have a falling out from a hunting contest, deciding to begin a duel on a prehistoric island for the right to return home to Elbaf. This results in the disbandment of the giant warrior pirates as their duel drags on over for the next century. 100 years ago, the remnants of the giant warrior pirates are captured by the Marines. However, during their execution at Marineford, the nun Carmel pleads to the Marines to spare them in the name of peace and to avoid further conflict. As light shines from the heavens, the Marines are pressured into letting the giants go. This was in reality a staged act planned by the Cypherpole to infiltrate the now Mother Carmel into Elbaf to found the House of Lambs, which would serve as her base for child trafficking. 82 years ago, the Burkan Haredas begins to study and research weather and meteorology. 81 years ago, the Koski clan of the Wano country is left without a heir, resulting in a struggle for succession among the Daimyo ruling the country's regions. Daimyo Kurozumi poisons his rivals, managing to become the only remaining candidate. However, on May 19th, Koski Sukiyaki was born as the heir of the Koski clan, thwarting the Kurozumi's plan. His plot exposed, Daimyo Kurozumi is forced to commit seppuku, and his clan is persecuted for years to come. 77 years ago, Goldie Roger is born in Lockdown and would struggle over a difficult childhood. Eventually, as a young man, he would recruit Silver Disraeli to start his own pirate crew. 67 years ago, Harada finishes the construction of the artificial sky island Weatheria. 63 years ago, considered a trouble kid due to her size and erratic behavior, Charlotte Linlin is abandoned in Elbaf, in hopes that Mother Carmel will be able to take care of her. That same year, during December, Elbaf's solstice fast begins. Across the next days, Linlin struggles to endure the fast, and on the 7th day of the solstice fast, driven by her hunger of Semla, Linlin goes on a hunger pang and destroys the settlement on Elbaf, killing Yordle in the process. Carmel manages to save the village thanks to her powers by giving birth to the homie Pandora and pleads to spare Linlin. The Giants hold a deep grudge towards Linlin, but they accept to let Mother Carmel go and help her relocate her House of Lambs to another island. 62 years ago, on February 15th, during Linlin's 6th birthday, Linlin loses control and ends up devouring all the children of the House of Lambs, including Mother Carmel. During that instance, Carmel's Soto powers are transferred to Linlin. However, in her delirium, Linlin would remain oblivious to the truth for the rest of her life, wondering why Carmel and all her friends suddenly disappeared. A young pirate Stroyson encounters the lost Linlin and offers to team up, giving start to what would become the Big Mom Pirates. 59 years ago, Kosuke Oden is born as the heir to Shogun Sukiyaki of the Wano country. Ironically, that same year, Kaido would also be born and grow up as a child soldier in the Vodka Kingdom. 56 years ago, Garp, Sengoku, and Tsuru, who would become legends of marine history, joined the Marines. 55 years ago, Shimotsuki Kozaburo crafts the Wado Ichimonji and Emma, the latter a present for a 4-year-old Oden. A group of 25 people, including Shimotsuki Kozaburo and Shimotsuki Furiko, would then leave Wano on a journey. 54 years ago, Kurozumi Orochi is born but lives a life of persecution due to being the grandson of Daimyo Kurozumi, persecuted for his grandfather's failed coup. 52 years ago, the pirate Goldie Roger becomes known as a famous rookie. That same year, Oimo and Kashi are tricked by the world government to become gatekeepers for Enies Lobby to supposedly free Dory and Broggy from being hostages. This is all a lie by the government to deceive the gullible giants into protecting the Judiciary Island. Also that year, the Rumber Pirates enter the Grand Line and are followed by the whale Laboon. After 3 months at the Twin Capes, the Rumber Pirates depart for the Grand Line. They part ways with Laboon but promise to meet again one day in the future. The captain of the Rumber Pirates, Yorkie, is later affected with a disease and is forced to attempt to leave the Grand Line via the Calm Belt. Brook becomes the captain of the Rumber Pirates in his state and receives his first 33 million belly bounty. The Rumber Pirates are then fatally wounded in a clash against another crew in the Florian Triangle. They decide to record their final concert on a tone dial and are all killed by their wounds. Among the dead Rumber Pirates, Brook's soul returns to life thanks to the powers of his Yomi Yomi powers, but struggles to find his body and wanders around the Florian Triangle for quite a while. At the same time, the group of 25 people that left Wano defeats a group of pirates in a village in East Blue. In its place, they found Shimotsuki Village, together with the locals, and around 10 of them stay behind to live there. 51 years ago, after searching for his body for a year, Brook's soul finally locates it and re-enters it, returning to life. However, Brook finds himself stranded on a ship in the Florian Triangle, unable to leave it in any form. 47 years ago, a 4-year-old genie becomes a slave. 46 years ago, at age 2, Charlotte Katakuri eats donuts for the first time and becomes enamored with them. 46 years ago, at age 13, Kaido is sold off to the government by his kingdom to earn the right to join the Reverie. 45 years ago, the flower capital of the Wano country is afflicted by a drought. To help the drought, at age 14, Kosuke Oden redirects a river to the capital, but accidentally floods it in the process and earns another arrest warrant. He attempts to escape the country, but fails. At age 3, Katakuri eats too many donuts at once, tearing apart the sides of his face and leaving a scar on both sides of his cheeks. Over 44 years ago, around the year 1480, Rocks Digiback and the pirate crew he managed to assemble on Hachinosu Island terrorized the world, marking this period of time as the Era of Rocks. That same year, Edward Newgate convinces Kaido, age 15, to join the Rocks Pirates. There, Kaido first meets Charlotte Linlin, now known as the infamous pirate Big Mom. 44 years ago as well, the Harem War takes place. At age 15, Oden threatens the priest of a mountain temple to shelter him and begins his own harem there. Despite having attained his lovers consensually, Oden's harem stirs the ire of his lover's relatives, giving start to the Harem War of the Wano country. 43 years ago, Kuma and his family are enslaved by the Celestial Dragons due to their buccaneer heritage after a blood test from his birth leaks. Kuma would lose both his mother and father over the next 4 years as a slave in Marijua. At age 5, Katakuri eats the Mochi Mochi no Mi. 42 years ago, a group of villagers flee to the Organ Archipelago after their old settlement was destroyed by pirates. There they decide to found Orange Town together from scratch. That same year, the pirate Shakuyaku gives up her pirate life and opens Shaki's Rip-Off Bar at the Sabari Archipelago. Skypiea dweller Marilyn also wins the Miss Skypiea title, though you probably forgot who this character is. Around 41 years ago, Kurozumi Higurashi returns to the Wano country after spending some time abroad involved with the rocks and inducts Orochi to a plan to take over the country, feeding him the Heibebi no Mi mythical model Yamata no Orochi. That same year, the Mountain God incident takes place. Kinemon accidentally lures a giant boar known as the Mountain God into the flower capital of the Wano country. However, thanks to Oden's efforts, no one is killed during the incident but is exiled from the capital after he covers up for Kinemon. Kinemon and Danger decide to become Oden's first followers. Oden spends some time with Shimotsuki Yasuye before deciding to explore the rest of Wano. In the meantime, Orochi steals money from Yasuye, acting as his servant. Around 40 years ago, Kanjuro's parents are killed on stage for being Kurozumi. Heartbroken, Kanjuro is rescued by Orochi, who asks him to become a spy by following Oden, feeding him the Fude Fude no Mi. Izu and Kiku become homeless after the father is arrested, forced to survive as entertainers in the streets of Ringo. They are soon found and taken in by Oden. Kanjuro joins Oden's boss after a chance encounter, though in truth he is infiltrating on Orochi's orders to keep an eye on Oden's actions. Ninja Raizo had left the Oniwa Banshu after being rejected by Akunoichi and living isolated in Udo, also joins Oden's crew. 39 years ago, the Roger Pirates have a run-in with the Rocks Pirates. The Roger Pirates also reach the island of Lodestar, the final point of the Grand Line at the end of the log pose, being the first to reach it in centuries. However, they realize that yet another fallen island remains and continue their journey to complete their circumnavigation of the world. That same year, Oden enters Kuri and defeats all its ruffians and their ringleader Ashuradoji. He makes a pledge to help restore the region back to prosperity. Ashuradoji joins Oden as his follower. After helping restore Kuri into a prosperous region, Oden is granted the title of Daimyo by his father, the Shogun. His followers are officially recognized as his vassals. Around 38 years ago, a young Morgans establishes the World Economic Newspaper, distributing news across the world through the Newsku system. The Celestial Dragons also steal the treasure of Hachinosu, seemingly being a certain Dao fruit, and bring it towards God Valley for their upcoming tournament. Then, 38 years ago, the Celestial Dragons hold their triennial genocide tournament on the island of God Valley. Kuma attempts to flee slavery on the island, but ends up meeting Ivankov and Ginny for the first time, who team up with him. Ginny leaks the location of the treasure the Celestial Dragons stole from Brox, being on the island in a communication, in hopes that the pirates come after it and cause a distraction for them to escape. Then takes place the famous God Valley incident. The Rocks Pirates invade God Valley as the Celestial Dragons are holding their genocide tournament to seize the treasure the government took from them, but so do the Roger Pirates and several other crews. In a historical duel, Monkey D. Garp and Gold D. Roger team up to clash against the Rocks Pirates. Big Mom successfully takes the Uowo no Mi Model Seiryu from the government, who she feeds to Kaido, while Kuma eats the Nikyu Nikyu no Mi and helps up to 500 people escape. Rocks Dijabek himself allegedly dies, and the island of God Valley vanishes from the map, so the Rocks Pirates disband as a result. As Roger escapes the island, he finds a baby Figureland Shanks in a treasure chest and decides to raise him as his own. With the conclusion of the God Valley incident, the era of the Rocks ends and the era of Roger begins on 1486, 38 years ago, marked by Roger's rise to power over the next 14 years. Monkey D. Garp is given all credit for the defeat of the Rocks Pirates in the newspapers and thus comes to be known as the Hero of the Marines. Most details on the incident and the Rocks are however kept hidden by the government due to Shebek's taboo interest in becoming the king of the world. Having escaped the God Valley incident, Kuma returns to the Sorbet Kingdom with Ivankov and Genie, and Ivankov parts way with the two as Kuma and Genie grow up together in Sorbet. That same year, Charlotte Burleigh is injured and scarred by a gang that Karakuri had stirred trouble with after they mocked him for his mouth, so he decides to take revenge on them and vows to never show his mouth to someone else ever again. Between 38 to 24 years ago, Dufeld founds MADS, a wandering clandestine lab researching without limits in the supposed name of peace. Its team is comprised by Vegapunk, Caesar, Judge, Queen, and Buckingham Stussy, the latter freeloading after the dissolution of the Rocks and serving as the first subject of a cloning experiment, resulting in the first successful MADS clone number 1, Stussy. Dr. Vegapunk later wins the Nobel Peace Prize and gets to meet the 5 Elder Planets. Sometime after, the government disbands MADS and reintegrates them into a research unit working for the government. Vegapunk and Caesar join this unit, while Judge and Queen flee, with Judge continuing research in his nomad Germa kingdom. 37 years ago, Hero Luke begins his research to make Sakura blossom in his home country of the Drum Kingdom after being miraculously cured of his terminal disease upon seeing a forest of sakura trees atop a certain mountain in the west. 33 years ago, the remnants of the Rocks Pirates begin growing their own crews and expanding their claims and infamy. In Wano, Inuarashi and Kawamushi shipwreck on the shores after setting sail from Zou. They are captured alongside Kawamatsu, but Oden rescues them all and allows them to join him as retainers. After a failed attempt to steal money from Hakumai, Oden's retainers are captured by Daimyo Yasuye, but the latter offers them the money, encouraging them to educate themselves and become retainers worthy of someone like Oden. The celestial dragon Don Quixote Humming, on that same year, decides to renounce his status to live alongside humans and migrates with his wife and children to an island in the north. However, the citizens take their rage against the celestial dragons onto Humming's family, forcing them to live a runaway life of poverty, unable to return to Marijua, as Humming realizes how naive he was. Due to the poor conditions of their runaway life, Humming's wife becomes ill and passes away of sickness. Over 32 years ago, Caulifla enters the Grand Line from the South Blue with his parents, who are pirates. That same year, 32 years ago, a 26-year-old Sakazuki and 23-year-old Borsalino joined the Marines. 31 years ago, a small criminal gang led by Trebol, including Pika, Diamante, and Corazon Virgo, meet Doflamingo. Impressed by Doflamingo's skill with Conqueror's Haki, Trebol bestows upon him a gun and the Ito Itonomi, claiming he is destined to become the king of the sea. Doflamingo uses the gun Trebol gave him to commit patricide and kill his father Don Quixote Humming. He tries to use his father's murder as a way to get back to Marijua, but is rejected by the Celestial Dragons once again. During this process, he and his brother Rocinante are forced to split ways. Doflamingo will return to Trebol, where Rocinante would end up being adopted by Sengoku. 30 years ago, Monkey D. Garp and Chinchao clash, resulting in Garp flattening Chinchao's famous drill-shaped head, which makes the latter lose access to the treasure hidden behind the jewel eye sheet, which could only be opened by his drill head. Chinchao swears revenge on Garp's family in turn. From this historic clash, Garp earns another epithet of Garp the Fist. Later that year, a 19-year-old Kuzan joins the Marines and eventually ends up as Garp's protégé. Oden's retainers in Wano, having now become proper samurai, accompany Oden as he visits his sickly father at the flower capital for one last time. The Whitebeard pirates end up shipwrecking on Wano, and Newgate meets Oden for the first time. Oden begs Whitebeard to let him on his crew, but despite refusing at first, in the end Newgate accepts Oden into the crew after testing him during his departure from the country. Amatsuki Toki, who lived from 800 years in the past, also meets Kosuke Oden at sea and joins him with the Whitebeard pirates. Meanwhile, in the Sorbet Kingdom, King Bekori rises as the ruler following King Bulldog. To appease the Celestial Dragons and pay celestial tribute, he enforces several policies that cause suffering to his populace. 29 years ago, a Dressrosa slum kid by the name of Kyros loses his friend to murder, so he kills the two culprits in retaliation. He is arrested by the army and sent to fight at the Corrida Colosseum as punishment. Just 4 months after being arrested, Kyros earns 100 victories at the Colosseum, earning his freedom. However, he decides to remain in the Colosseum to fight. 28 years ago, Goldie Roger finds out he has a terminal disease and little longer to live. He enters the Grand Line once again in hopes of accomplishing his dream of a complete circumnavigation of the world by finding the final island. At the Twin Capes, he meets the expert Dr. Crocus, who manages to stabilize his disease and joins his crew to help him complete his journey. The same year, Nico Ovia joins an archaeologist research group to go search for poneglyphs and discover the true history. Because of this, she has to leave behind her daughter Robin in care of her brother and sister-in-law, who would become neglectful and abusive towards Robin over the years. After Momonosuke's birth, Whitebeard decides to organize his crew into divisions. Oden is promoted to 2nd Division Commander, and a seemingly orphan Marshal Ditich begs Whitebeard to let him join his crew. He secretly takes advantage of Whitebeard's travels and influence to search for the Yami Yami Nomi. Meanwhile, Kurozumi Higurashi approaches Kaido and offers him to take over the Wano country by teaming up with Orochi. In the Wano country, Shogun Sukiyaki is kidnapped and secretly imprisoned by Orochi, who, thanks to Kurozumi Higurashi and her powers of the Mane Mane Nomi, manages to convince the country that Sukiyaki appointed Orochi as a proxy shogun until Oden's return. This is just a step towards the Kurozumi's plan to seize control of the country. Also this year, Heracles set sails alongside other botanists to learn more about plants. 27 years ago, Roger enters the New World once again in search for the remaining poneglyphs. The Battle of Edward takes place as the Roger pirates square off against the fleet of Shiki the Golden Lion in the Sea of Edward, but suddenly a storm results in a disastrous defeat for Shiki's fleet, with Shiki himself ending up with a steering wheel encrusted into his skull while Roger miraculously escapes. 26 years ago, Neptune becomes the king of the Ryugu Kingdom. Our long-supposed father leaves 3-year-old Shirley in her 15-year-old half-brother's care, and Kyros achieves a record 1,000 victories in the Corrida Coliseum. Having fully seized control of the nation, Orochi teams up with Kaido to build weapon factories in Wano, which begin exporting weapons to the rest of the world for profit. The Roger pirates and the Whitebeard pirates clash for 3 days on a certain island. On the 4th day, Roger manages to convince Oden to join him in helping him decipher the remaining poneglyphs, embarking on a new journey. The Roger pirates make it to Skypiea, where they locate the last poneglyph of Shandora, detaining the location of the ancient weapon Poseidon. Roger has Oden carve an inscription on the belfry marking his passage there, and on the island, Roger befriends the god Ganfol, who helps them descend from the island. A 10-year-old Cuttiflam is tossed overboard from his ship by his pirate parents after being too much to deal with, and ends up shipwrecking at Water 7. The Roger pirates pass at that moment by Water 7, where Roger meets with Tom for a final time. Oden meets with an abandoned Cuttiflam and invites him to join the crew, but is turned down after the kid's disdain for his pirate parents. As the Roger pirates leave Water 7, Tom encounters the young Cuttiflam on the scrap island of Water 7, and the kid requests him to take him in, to which Tom accepts. The Roger pirates then reach the Sabaody archipelago again and make for Fishman Island. On the way there, Roger and Oden overhear Sea Kings through the voice of all things, who are talking about the meeting of 2 kings to come in the near future. The Roger pirates then make it to Fishman Island and discover another road poneglyph alongside the poneglyph recording the apology related to Joy Boy. She really foresees the birth of the next mermaid princess 10 years from then, after Roger asks her. Then the Roger pirates reach Wano, attaining yet another road poneglyph. Toki, who has fallen ill from exhaustion, stays at Wano with her children and retainers, while Oden continues his journey with the Roger pirates, despite his retainers begging him to help them save their country. Finally, the Roger pirates reach Zou, locating their final road poneglyph. A young Pedro asks Roger to take him with him, but Roger tells him to wait his turn. Also this year, Big Mom's 22nd and 23rd daughters, Charlotte, Lol, and Chiffon, are born to her and Pound. Big Mom divorces and exiles Pound after their birth, as she has no more use for him. Then, at last, 25 years ago, the Roger pirates become the first people to reach the very final island of the Grand Line for the first time in 8 centuries, and the first to witness a treasure relating to Joy Boy, bringing them to laughter upon seeing it. Having learned much about the true history, as well as witnessing Joy Boy's laugh tale, Roger decides to aptly name the final island Laugh Tale. News of the Roger pirates' achievement spread across the world, and Roger becomes known as the Pirate King, with many in the world wanting to find the treasure Roger left behind, which they call the One Piece. Roger realizes that he was born too early, as the ancient weapons were not born yet upon the world, and believes someday a new Joy Boy will arise and surpass him. With his dream complete, Roger disbands the Roger pirates and bids them farewell. As the Roger pirates disband, Oden returns to Wano and learns of Orochi's rise to power. Orochi blackmails Oden with the lives of the citizens, forcing him to dance naked like a fool across the streets of Wano for the next 5 years to humiliate him. Oden complies to save the lives of as many citizens as possible. Monkey D. Dragon, who had abandoned the Marines that had formed the freedom fighters who lead protests across the world, becomes a wanted man. Genie proposes to Kuma, but Kuma turns her down out of fear of her following the fate of his mother. At Fishman Island, Charlie foresees a great pirate era in the following year, and Heracles reaches the Boyne Archipelago alongside other researchers and begins to study the flora there. On the year 1500, 24 years ago, around April, Roger leaves his lover Portgas de Rouge pregnant with a child, and by September, with his health now critical, he gives himself in to the Marines and is set to be executed at his birthplace of Lockdown. During his imprisonment, he asks Garp to take care of his unborn son. Learning of Roger's execution, Shiki goes around on a mad rampage in Marineford just 1 week before Roger is executed. He is stopped by the efforts of Garp and Sengoku and is arrested and sent to Impel Down. Wealth, fame, power. The man who attained everything in this world, the Pirate King Goldie Roger, is executed at Lockdown on September of this year. With his final words, he encourages people to go search for the One Piece treasure, leading to a booming piracy that marks this moment as the end of Roger's era and the beginning of the Great Pirate Era. This era would also come to be known by some with the name of Whitebeard's era. Several figures that would leave their mark in the future attend Roger's execution, including the likes of Crocodile, Doflamingo, Moria, Mihawk, Dragon, Shanks, and Buggy. After the conclusion of Roger's execution, Shanks and Buggy have a falling out, as Shanks declares to not be interested in going after the One Piece for a while due to some reason. Buggy feels betrayed after having admired Shanks for so long that he refuses to join his crew and runs away. Oden learns through a newspaper about Roger's death, shedding tears over the grand death of his great friend. The shipwright Tom is also tried and sentenced to death for the building of Roger's ship, the Oro Jackson. However, he is given 10 years of extension to complete his vision of the sea train, as he promises his creation will help save Water 7's economy. Furthermore, that same year, Hercules' fellow researchers are all killed by the dangers of the Boyan archipelago, forcing him to continue his research on his own alone. The next year, 1501, 23 years ago, pirate rookie Gecko Moria clashes against Emperor Kaido in the Wano country. Kaido ultimately emerges victorious and kills most of Moria's crew, but Moria manages to escape. During this event, Moria desecrates Ryuma's grave in the Ringo region of Wano and steals his corpse and his blade, Shusui. Then the next year, 1502 or 22 years ago, on January 1st, Goldie Ace is born as the child of the late Goldie Roger and Portugas de Rouge. His mother, who kept Ace in her womb for 20 months to avoid detection by the Marines, dies shortly after delivery, and thus Ace is taken in by Monkey D. Garp, as requested to him by Roger. Busy with his duties though, Garp leaves Ace in the car of his mountain bandit friend Dadan at Don Island, and Ace takes the family name Portugas to hide his heritage. That same year, Sylvus Rayleigh is saved after becoming lost at sea by the young Fishman Hatchan. Nico Robin is officially made a scholar of Ohara at the young age of 8, and Vice Admiral Jaguar de Sol, after helping Nico Olvia break free from prison, washes up on the shores of Ohara and befriends the young Robin. From this, the Ohara incident follows. The 5 Elder Planets summon a buster called Ohara after they discover that the scholars there have been researching the poneglyphs. Professor Clover, Nico Olvia, and all the scholars of Ohara are killed as the island is burned to the ground, while Vice Admiral Sakazuki also kills all the island's citizens to ensure that none escape. However, thanks to the efforts of the scholars, many of the library's books are saved, and a young Nico Robin manages to flee the island, beginning a runaway life as she is hunted by the government and hated by the world. Saul sacrifices himself so that Robin can run away, but Kuzan secretly saves Saul's life, letting him run away into hiding. That same year, Shanks recruits Yasopp to join his crew after hearing of a talented sniper in the Gecko Islands. Mary draws the plan to build the Going Merry, hoping to build the ship someday, and searching Rare Animal Island for treasure, Pirate Gaimon accidentally gets stuck inside an empty treasure chest and is left behind by his crew, leaving him stranded on the island. Shiki's escape also takes place, as Shiki escapes Impel Down, becoming its first publicly known escapee. He sets up base at the Merville Archipelago and devises a plan to conquer the world that would take him around 20 years. A few months after the Ohara incident that same year, Dr. Vegapunk and Monkey D. Dragon meet at Ohara holding a brief funeral for the victims of the incident, as Dragon vows to change the world. Under the guidance of Jaguar de Sol, several giants transfer all the books that survived the incident to Elbaf to preserve the knowledge of Ohara. Sol goes into hiding at Elbaf alongside the preserved library. King Bekori passes a law that annexes half of his Sorbet kingdom, turning the island's southern side into a lawless area to be exploited for the sake of celestial tribute. The freedom fighters help liberate the country and overturn the law, resulting in Kuma and Genie joining the freedom fighters. This leads into the Revolutionary Army's founding. Monkey D. Dragon, who had been operating so far as the captain of the peaceful protesters, the Freedom Fighters, founds the Revolutionary Army alongside Ivankov and Kuma. At some point in the next 8 years, Monkey D. Dragon would also get the tattoo mark on his face. Around 21 years ago, Crocodile becomes one of the 7 Sea Warlords and clashes against the Emperor Whitebeard, suffering a bitter defeat. Vinsmoke Judge has his upcoming quadruplets genetically modified to become powerful and emotionless soldiers, but his wife Sora takes a medicine to avert that process, heavily poisoning her body. The 4 princes of the Germa Kingdom, Vinsmoke Ichiji, Niji, Sanji, and Yonji, are born on March 2nd as quadruplets to Vinsmoke Judge and Sora. Sora's medicine only has an effect on Sanji, who becomes the only one of them to remain human with emotions. This same year, Roro no Azoro is born in Shimotsuki village as the child of Roro no Arashi, descendant of the Shimotsuki line, and Tera, the daughter of bandits. Over 20 years ago, Whitebeard arrives at Fishman Island, which had been swarmed with pirates during the Great Pirate Era, and makes it his territory to protect it from pirate attacks. 20 years ago, Kyros wins his 3000th battle at the Kurita Coliseum. King Riku offers him to leave the Coliseum and become captain of the royal army. The Wano country's flower capital, Yakuza boss Hyogoro, is taken prisoner by Kaido. 16 of his men, as well as his wife, are killed in the process. Oden realizes he has been tricked by Orochi and decides to march to Onigashima with his vassals to take down Kaido. Marching in the sunset, Oden's vassals would come to be known from this moment as the 9 Red Scabbards. Kanjuro, however, leaks the plan to Kaido, who ambushes Oden on the mainland. The two clash and Oden manages to scar Kaido for the first time, but due to the interference of Higurashi, Kaido ends up winning the duel. Kurozumi Higurashi is executed by Kaido for interfering in his duel with Oden, leading into the Hour of Legends. Few days after his clash with Kaido, the imprisoned Kosuke Oden is said to be executed by being boiled alive, but manages to survive an entire hour inside the boiling pot without letting his vassals burn in it by holding all of them over his head. Kaido executes Oden directly, but the samurai entrusts them with his dream of opening the borders of the Wano country to all of his vassals, who manage to run away. Witnessing Oden's legendary execution, Yamato is impressed by the samurai and flees to Kuri to attempt to save Momonosuke, but is too late as the castle has already been besieged and set on fire by King. However, Yamato manages to locate Oden's journal and hides it away, becoming enamored by Oden's adventures. Toki uses her powers to send her son Kosuke Momonosuke and his vassals Kinemon, Kanjuro, Raizo no Kiku 20 years into the future, hoping they can come into contact with the future Joy Boy, who will turn the world upside down and hopefully defeat Kaido, just like Oden foresaw would happen in 20 years. The other vassals, as well as Toki's daughter Hiyori, are left behind as backup to ensure the bloodline isn't wiped. Toki is killed by the Beast Pirates as she chants out a prophecy in Oden's name in front of the people of the country. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi have a falling out over Oden's execution and end up being captured by Kaido's forces, but manage to escape and return to their homeland of Zou. However, the two would remain bitter for years to come over this grudge, eventually leading to the Mokomo Dukedom's rotating Duke cycle, where each of the two would rule over a separate stretch of 12 hours. The Daimyo of Wano oppose Orochi and Kaido, but are all defeated and captured. Shimotsuki Yasuye is the only one who manages to escape and goes into hiding. Inspired by Oden's exploits, Yamato decides to become a man to become Kosuke Oden. Upon applying this to his father, Kaido is frustrated and has Yamato jailed alongside the other daimyo. Over the next 10 days, however, the daimyo Shimotsuki Ushimaru, Uzuki Tempura, and Fugetsu Musubi inspire Yamato and sacrifice themselves to let Yamato run away, leaving him as a runaway across Onigashima, defying his father for years to come. However, due to his explosive shackles, Yamato cannot leave the island. Denjiro is unable to forgive himself for failing to save Oden and drowns in his frustration over a long time. Later in the year, he begins to move on to help the people of Wano and decides to take the name of Kyoshiro, becoming a new established Yakuza in the flower capital. Page 1 is born this year as the younger brother of Ulti, and their pirate father dies soon after, so Kaido, who was acquainted with their father, takes the two children in as his own. 19 years ago, Uta, who has already eaten the Uta Utanomi, at age 2 is kidnapped by pirates who raid her village. The red-haired pirates plunder the ship that kidnapped Uta, and a 20-year-old Shanks finds her among their treasures. Uta joins as the musician of the red-haired pirates, and Shanks adopts her as his daughter. In the following 6 years, 19 to 13 years ago, Shanks would be attacked by Marshal Ditich of the Whitebeard pirates during a conflict, leaving a 3-line scar over his left eye. Back to 19 years ago, now captain of the Royal Army, Kira struggles to be accepted by Princess Scarlet, but after rescuing her from a kidnapping attempt, Scarlet slowly begins to fall in love with him. Over the next 3 years, as she gradually falls in love with Kyros, Scarlet decides to fake her death to the public with the help of her father in order to be able to marry a commoner like Kyros. The two of them live out a humble life on Dressrosa's Flower Hill while still keeping in touch with the royal family. Back to 19 years ago, Bellamere returns to Kokoyashi village with 2 orphans she found in the war-torn Oikot kingdom, Naimi and Nojiko, and decides to adopt them as her daughters. Bo Hancock, Sandersonia, and Marigold are kidnapped by slave traders during a trip at sea and sold as slaves to the Celestial Dragons. Monkey D. Luffy on May the 5th is born as the son of Monkey D. Dragon. Over 18 years ago, the region of Ringo in the Wano country falls to the Beast Pirates. Onimaru, the Komagitsune of former daimyo Shimotsuke Shimaru, stays behind to protect the region from grave robbers for the following 5 years. 17 years ago, Otohime, Queen of Fishman Island, begins a campaign to gather signatures in order to petition to move Fishman Island to the surface so that humans and sea folk can exist together. The Ukama incident takes place as a certain king visits the Kamabaka kingdom but returns to his kingdom having transitioned as a woman thanks to Ivankov's fruit powers. This results in a political scandal that results in the royal family losing their status. The prince Belet is eventually forced to become a pirate and develops a grudge of Ivankov as a result. A certain kingdom is overrun with pirates and 500 soldiers of its army are taken hostage. The government sends a 13-year-old Cypherpol agent Rob Lucci, who slaughters both pirates and hostages. During the event, he is shot with several cannonballs on the back, leaving a large scar. Don Quixote Rocinante, now a marine, infiltrates his brother's crew, the Don Quixote family, to spy on them as an undercover marine. Doflamingo passes the seat and name Corazon from Virgo to his brother Rocinante. A 5-year-old noble from the Goa kingdom, Sabo, runs away from his family after being disgusted by the corruption of noble life. He befriends a young ace and begins to gather treasure together with him to one day buy a pirate ship and escape the island. 16 years ago, the 1508 Reverie takes place. Queen Otohime desires to present the proposal to migrate to Fishman Island to the surface, but ends up not participating in the Reverie due to a lack of enough signatures. Fisher Tiger, who escaped from being a slave at Marijoa, returns to Fishman Island. He talks with Neptune and Otohime, mentioning his desire to free the other slaves at the Holy Land. This same year, the Amber Lead crisis takes place. The poisonous effects of the Amber Lead finally begin taking effect on the people of the white town of Flevens, resulting in a medical crisis. Though the effects are not contagious, false rumors of the Amber Lead are spread, and the country's neighboring Flevens mutilate their citizens in retaliation, ultimately leading to the downfall of the country as the royal family abandons it to its fate. A young Trafalgar D. Waterlaw is caught in the Amber Lead crisis and loses his parents, his sister Lammy, and all of his friends. Law manages to escape the border by hiding in a pile of corpses, but this event leaves a deep scar on his mental state. Virgo leaves the Don Quixote family to go on a top-secret mission to infiltrate the Marines, but none of the other members are made aware of it due to the secrecy of the mission. Trafalgar Law then joins the Don Quixote pirates, thirsty for blood, and at the same time, Crocodile becomes a hero in the Alabasta Kingdom by hunting down pirates to bring himself a good pirate image, all the while scheming a plan to take over the country in the future. 15 years ago, the raid of Marijoa takes place. Fisher Tiger scales the Red Line and raids Marijoa, freeing thousands of slaves from the clutches of the Celestial Dragons. Boa Hancock, Marigold, and Sandersonia are able to escape thanks to his efforts. Fisher Tiger forms the Seafolk crew of the Sun Pirates with friends and former slaves. Jimbo leaves the Royal Army to join the crew. Hancock, Marigold, and Sandersonia are found by Yaon Gloriosa, and thanks to the help of Riley and Shakuyaku, they are helped return to their homeland of Amazon Lily. Virgo enters the Marines as part of the mission given to him by Doflamingo, and the Nox Expedition crew, a group formed by Pedro, Pecoms, Zeppo, and other Minks who left Zou in search of poneglyphs, is branded as criminals and are thus branded as the Nox Pirates. Professional boxer Foxy is discovered attempting to cheat during a match by using a weapon and is revoked his boxing license. A rebellion breaks out in Tumi in the South Blue. The conflict evolves into a civil war over the next 3 years. Over 14 years ago, Tom's workers abandoned the first sea train prototype they built, the Rocket Man, due to its steam engine being uncontrollable. Construction of the first public sea train, the Perfect Tom, is finally completed 14 years ago, and the first railway is open to the public, giving start to a new opportunity for prosperity for Water 7. Tom is given an extension to his ruling to finish the 3 other railways. In search of his older brother Zeppo, Beppo accidentally falls out Zunisha after trying to get a better view of the sea, and eventually ends up arriving in the North Blue. Virgo requests to be transferred to G5, and the Revolutionary Army East Commander Genie is kidnapped during a mission and taken as a wife for a celestial dragon. Around 13 years ago, Vinsmoke Judge is disappointed by his son Sanji being just a regular human, and decides to imprison him in his castle under an iron mask after deeming him a failure. Publicly, he fakes his son's funeral. 13 years ago, Don Quixote Rocinante discovers Law is a D member and takes him away to find a cure, leaving the Don Quixote family for a period of time as he visits hospitals across several islands. Boa Hancock becomes the Empress of Amazon Lily and captain of the Kuja Pirates. Soon after, she's offered the position of warlord. Foxy, currently having had his boxing license revoked, ends up eating the Noro Noro Nomi. Princess Nefertari Viva Alabasta gets in a fight with local Koza and ends up becoming the vice leader of the youth gang Suna Suna clan. On one day, she's almost abducted by bandit Agotogi, but Koza protects her. Toto and other merchants of Alabasta then found the town of Yuba within an oasis in the country to serve as a center of commerce. The Marines agree to buy the Ope-Ope-Nomi from the Barrels pirates on Rubac Island, but Roshinante steals the fruit from their base on Minion Island and feeds it to Law, saving his life from the Amber Lead disease. Doflamingo entraps the Barrels pirates in his birdcage and kills both Captain 10 Barrels and his own brother Rocinante, though Law manages to survive and escape. Meanwhile, Barrel's son, 10 Drake, manages to escape the island and his abusive father in the chaos of the birdcage and is saved by the Marines. Sengoku takes him in and raises him to become a Marine. As Law escapes from Minion Island, he meets Shachi and Penguin bullying a lost Beppo. Law rounds them up to form the Hard Pirates. In the Wano country, Kosuke Hiyori feels guilty that her samurai Kawamatsu is going hungry for her sake and decides to run away. She's soon after taken in by her other samurai, Denjiro, at the flower capital. Kawamatsu feels guilty after Hiyori left and attempts to commit seppuku, but instead decides to aid Onimaru in protecting and hiding away the swords of Ringo so that they may be used in 13 years' time. He fends off the land from grave robbers by posing as the warrior Gyukimaru. While trying to procure food though, Kawamatsu is captured and imprisoned in the prison mines of Udon, sentenced to eat poisonous fish by Orochi. Unaware to Orochi though, Kawamatsu endures the sentence for the next 13 years. Onimaru remains behind at Ringo to protect the swords thanks to his Onyudo mythical Dao fruit, assuming Kawamatsu's identity as Gyukimaru. Over 6 months after Gainsmoke Judge faked the death of Sanji, the German kingdom moves operations to East Blue. During an assault on the Kotsuya kingdom, Sanji manages to escape from his father on the ship Orbit, where he works as an assistant cook. His father lets him run away, but demands Sanji abandon the Windsmoke name. A government ship escorting the Hito-Hitonomi model Nika, now also reclassified as the Gomu Gomu Nomi, is raided by the Red Hair Pirates, and Lucky Roo ends up stealing the fruit in the process. For failing to protect the fruit, the Cypherpole agent in charge, Who's Who, is jailed. The Red Hair Pirates arrive in East Blue and begin using Fuchsia village of the Goa Kingdom as their base of operations for a while. Shanks meets a young boy by the name of Monkey D. Luffy, who grows close with Shanks and Uta. Sisters Monet, age 17, and Sugar, age 9, are rescued from a misfortunate environment by Doflamingo and join the Don Quixote family. Over 12 years ago, the Revolutionary Army searches for Nico Robin, who they call the Flame of the Revolution. 12 years ago, the 1520 Reverie takes place. Sugar, age 10, is also fed the Hobi-Obi-Nomi by Doflamingo, and her aging is halted by the effects of the fruit, forever leaving her 10 years old. In the Olija incident, the Red Hair Pirates visit Olija, where Uta showcases her talents. However, the music she taught Musica uses its will to take advantage of Uta's Uta-Autonomy powers and awaken once more, unleashing the Devil King from ancient times back upon the world once more. Thankfully, Shanks manages to seal the Devil King once again, but decides to leave his daughter Uta behind on Olija to allow her to lead a normal life, though Uta grows depressed and lonely after being abandoned. The news identifies Shanks as the suspect of the Olija incident, with Shanks being given a 1.004 billion belly bounty. The Red Hair Pirates return to Fuchsia village, but Luffy is distraught by Uta not being there anymore, and Shanks, still heartbroken, refuses to tell Luffy what happened, but the two slowly reconcile over time. Park Camplin Mont Blanc Cricket arrives at Jaya and decides to settle the score with his ancestor Noland by trying to see if the City of Gold really did exist, but his crew leaves him behind as they have no interest in Noland's story. Back at Fuchsia village, Luffy cuts himself under his left eye to prove his worth through the Red Hair Pirates, but Shanks still refuses to take him to sea with him. Luffy, however, accidentally eats the Gomu Gomu Nomi the crew had seized, unaware of inheriting the power of Joy Boy. Well-renowned Dr. Hogback falls in love with performer Victoria Sindri, but is turned down as she's already engaged. Shortly after, Sindri dies in a tragic accident on stage, sending Hogback into deep depression. During a scuffle with the bandit Higuma, Higuma kidnaps Luffy but is devoured by the Lord of the Coast of Dawn Island. Luffy is nearly eaten too, but Shanks saves him, losing his arm in the process. The Red Hair Pirates decide to stop using Fuchsia Village as their base of operations and leave permanently, but Luffy vows to Shanks that he'll become the Pirate King. In turn, Shanks gives Luffy his straw hat and asks him to safeguard it until they meet again. Concerned by his recent behavior, Garp leaves his grandchild Luffy in the care of foster mother Curly Dan, head of bandits at Mont Corvo. There, he first meets her other foster child, Ace, and attempts to befriend him, but he is rejected time and time again for the next 3 months. Hogback encounters Gecko Moria, who offers him his Dao fruit to revive Sindri in exchange for helping him raise a zombie army. Hogback accepts, stealing Sindri's corpse to revive her as a zombie. Gecko Moria steals the shadow of a maid called Margarita in order to revive Sindri as a zombie, and the wandering ghost island of Thriller Bark, operated by Gecko Moria, settles in the Florian Triangle to prey on passing ships. Hawker opens a pet food store in Orange Town with the dog Shushu, and Hachan visits Shaki for the last time in the next 10 years. The Sand Pirates come across a young girl named Koala who is among the slaves that escaped from Marijua. They agree to take her back home. After chasing Asa for 3 months, Luffy comes upon the Great Terminal. After an incident with the pirate Porshemi, Ace and his friend Sabo agree to save and befriend Luffy, and the 3 boys become swift friends over the next months. Fisher Tiger returns Koala to her home, but is ambushed by the Marines and fatally wounded in the process. He refuses to be transfused human blood due to his hatred for humans, despite wishing he could love them, and dies as he asks his crew to help build a better future for both races. Harlong is captured by Vice Admiral Borsalino after trying to take revenge for his captain and later imprisoned. His testimony of this incident would later result in interspecies transfusion between humans and sea folk to be outlawed. After Fisher Tiger's death, Otohime continues campaigning for the emigration of Fishman Island to the surface, but struggles to make any progress. Meanwhile, pirate captain Redleg Zeph enters the Grand Line. On Long Ring Long Land, a local Tonjit attempts to break the world record of highest stilts, but ends up becoming stuck on them, unable to get down. His people eventually leave for the next island of the archipelago as they are a nomad tribe, leaving him and his horse Sherry behind. Sabo, Ace, and Luffy declare together to achieve their dreams, with Luffy sharing the goal that lies at the end of his dream. The 3 of them mark this occasion by exchanging a bottle of sake and becoming sworn brothers. Shanks comes across Rayleigh at the Sabo of the archipelago and tells him of Luffy. In the Great Terminal incident, Sabo's father, Outlook III, manages to locate his son and takes him back to his household, separating the brothers. On the next day, the Goa Kingdom carries the operation of burning the Great Terminal down in order to wipe out all those living there in preparation for the upcoming Celestial Dragon visit. Captain Blue Jam dies in the process as Luffy and H manage to escape, but most of the terminal's inhabitants are saved by the Revolutionary Army. During the burning of the Great Terminal incident, the revolutionaries are contacted about the struggling rebellion in Tumi in the South Blue. Kuma heads there with his powers to aid the rebels, finally ending the civil war and liberating the country. The celestial dragon Saint Jalmak arrives on a diplomatic inspection of the Goa Kingdom. Sao attempts to leave the island during the ceremony but is shot by Saint Jalmak. He is however saved at the last moment by Monkey D. Dragon, who allows him to join the Revolutionary Army after the young boy comes down with amnesia. Sabo comes to befriend Hack and other members of the army as he begins training under Dragon. As an enslaved wife of a celestial dragon, Ginny is forced to bear a child. During this time, elder planet Saint Saturn conducts drug experiments on Ginny, causing her to develop sapphire scales. On September 1st, Ginny's child Bonnie is born, carrying the same disease. They would invisibly manifest until several years later. Saturn experiments on the baby Bonnie by trying to feed her the Toshitoshinomi fruit as an extract, which proves to be a success. However, disgusted by her disease, Ginny's celestial dragon owner releases her, so Ginny attempts to return to the Sorbet Kingdom. Though sunlight worsens her condition, she forces herself to make the trip back to the Sorbet Kingdom so that her child can survive safely, and ultimately succumbs to her disease. Kuma promises to raise Bonnie in her place. 11 years ago, Gunfall attempts peace talks with the Shandia to attempt to stop the Sky War, but they prove unsuccessful. Kuina takes her 2001 victory against Zoro, but the two vow to aim to one day become the world's strongest swordsman. Unfortunately, Kuina dies after falling down the stairs. Zoro inherits the Wado Ichimonji from her and vows to make their dream come true. Redleg Zeph and his crew, the Cook Pirates, return from the Grand Line after their one-year trip. They attack the ship Orbit, but the ship sinks in a storm. Zeph and a young Sanji are shipwrecked on a sea stack with very little food to survive. In order not to starve, Zeph gives his share of food to Sanji and instead eats his own leg, because he wants the young kid to live on to fulfill his dream of finding the All Blue. After 85 days stuck on the sea stack, Sanji and Zeph are finally rescued from the verge of death. Sanji and Zeff then open the seafaring restaurant Barati together. Jinbei, now captain of the Sand Pirates, accepts an invitation to become a sea warlord, allowing his crew to return home to live normal lives. However, as an effect of this, Arlong is discharged from prison and leaves with some of his crewmates to build his own empire as the Arlong Pirates. At the same time, Macro, Gyaro, and Tansui reform the Macro Pirates. Jinbei tries to stop Arlong but can't bring himself to do so. Arlong attempts to recruit Vanderdecken IX, but he turns him down due to not offering good enough money. He then gains a 20 million belly bounty. Meanwhile, Who's Who breaks out of prison, where he was told about the legend of the sun god Nika. He becomes a pirate on the run and forms the Who's Who Pirates. Over his travels, he eventually comes across Jinbei as a warlord. 13 to 10 years ago, CP5 Agent Spandam visits the 5 Elder Planets for permission to search for the blueprints of Pluton. 10 years ago, Doflamingo begins to set up his Dressrosa operation by raiding ships with heavenly tribute. Due to his knowledge of the national treasure of Marijois, King Imu's existence, Doflamingo successfully blackmails the government into making him a warlord. Foxy discovers the legend of Davy Jones. He becomes a pirate and starts throwing Davy back fights. The people of Wano become desperate, waiting 20 years for Toki's prophecy to come true, making several of them launch a desperate raid on Onigashima. The raid ends in failure, resulting in the deaths of countless samurai. Carpenter Minatomo, designer of Kyros Castle on Onigashima, hugs the plans of said castle to his local pawn shop. Part of the Nox pirates want to stop their expedition due to low morale, so Peckhams takes part of the crew with him and leaves. They end up in Big Mom's territory, where they are recruited by and join the Big Mom Pirates. In the Dressrosa incident, Doflamingo uses his powers to manipulate and trick King Rikudoldo III of Dressrosa in a move to take over the throne of the country by framing Doldo as a lunatic and himself as a hero. During the tragic night, Princess Scarlet is murdered and Kyros is turned into the first of Sugar's new empire of toys. Princess Viola joins the Don Quixote family in exchange for the survival of her father. The celestial dragon Saint Mjosgard shipwrecks on Fishman Island and is almost killed by the locals, but Queen Otohime spares his life. During the incident, Princess Shirahoshi awakens her power as Poseidon, which leads Vanderdecken IX to begin stalking her for the next decade in hopes of marrying her and making use of her powers. Queen Otohime decides to join Saint Mjosgard in his turn to marry Joa on a diplomatic mission. There she managed to change Mjosgard's view of the world and convince him to offer his support for the emigration of Fishman Island to the surface and the equality of all races. This convinces many of the people of Fishman Island to finally support Otohime's efforts. Meanwhile, the contents of the national treasure of the Ryugu Kingdom, the Tamatebako, being a set of energy steroid drugs, are stolen by Hody Jones shortly before he leaves the Neptune army. As a result, the Tamatebako is armed with a bomb by the Minister of the Right to stop future thieves from taking it. Then, Queen Otohime's assassination takes place. On a day while gathering signatures, Queen Otohime is shot at Gyeongcourt Plaza. Otohime passes away from her wounds, but her children vow to inherit her will and make her dreams become reality. Her killer, Hody Jones, frames a human as the murderer in an attempt to sabotage Otohime's efforts. However, at Otohime's funeral, her children encourage the people of Fishman Island to restart the Queen's dream once again. Due to the constant threats and marriage proposals by Vanderdecken IX, Shihoshi is locked up in the Shell Tower of Ryugu Palace to keep her safe, while she will remain for the next 10 years. Arlong takes over the Konomi archipelago and sets a base there to begin his new empire. He forces the inhabitants to pay tribute and shoots Belle-Mère when she is unable to pay to save her daughters. Nami is forced to join the Arlong pirates, but Arlong offers to buy her village for 100 million belly, so Nami begins to gather said amount over the next years as a thief. CP5 Agent Spandam searches for the blueprints of Pluton at Water 7, but his research proves fruitless. 3 days later, during Tom's acquittal for the construction of the sea train, Spandam frames Tom in order to get him arrested once more, sending Tom to Enies Lobby to be executed. Tom's apprentice Cariflam attempts to stop Spandam, but despite injuring Spandam's face, he himself ends up severely injured in the process as he is stranded at sea. As he comes across an abandoned scrap ship, he repairs his body by becoming a cyborg. After Tom's passing, Iceberg vows to help change Water 7. He secretly inherits the plans of Pluton that Tom passed on to him. 9 years ago, war engulfs the Shikyari kingdom of Kuraigana Island, wiping away all civilization on it. The local humandrills replicate the behavior of humans by becoming violent creatures themselves. A 14-year-old koala is brought along by Hack and enrolled in the Revolutionary Army, where she befriends Sabo. Having moved into a village, Kyros, now the Thunder Soldier, looks after Rebecca as they spend their day-to-day life together. 8 years ago, the 1516 Reverie takes place. At this reverie, the threat of Monkey D. Dragon rising to power is brought up. King Wapo hates a young Princess Vivi out of spite for King Cobra, but through her professional behavior, Vivi dismisses the attack and prevents an international incident. In the fall of Burka, Burkan Enel uses his Dalford powers of the Goro no Mi to sink Burka and all its inhabitants out of the sky in a tragic incident, taking a few select troops with him to take over other sky islands. In the coup of Skypiea, Enel lands at Skypiea with his army after the destruction of Burka, and dethrones Ganfol as its new god, enacting a rule of fear on its people. This only heightens the tensions of the Sky War between the Skypeans and the Shandians. A reindeer from Drum Island who ate the Hitoitonomi is rejected by his pack, but struggles to fit among humans due to being treated like an abominable monster. Quack Dr. Hirolug finds the reindeer and takes him in under the name of Tony Tony Chopper like his own son. Enel enslaves all of the god corps in a cave to work on his secret project, the creation of the Ark Maxim. Nashira and Shoujo arrive at Jaya in search of Noland's past as big fans of the book and join Cricket by forming the Saruyama Alliance to help him find the lost city of gold. Kurozumi Tama is born in the Wano country but loses both of her parents at a young age due to Orochi's rule, which began affecting even those from his own clan. Around 7 years ago, Bonnie ends up developing Sapphire Scale Syndrome just like her mother, so Kuma holds her up inside their family church so she can remain safe from the sunlight. Kuma quits the Revolutionary Army to look after Bonnie, searching for a cure. 7 years ago, Kuma is told by a doctor that Bonnie's Sapphire Scale Syndrome is an incurable terminal disease. Piman, Tamanegi, and Ninjin join Usopp in founding the Usopp Pirates in Syrup Village. Iceberg founds the Galilea Company by unifying all the 7 shipbuilding companies and docks of Water 7, helping unify the island. CP9 members Rob Lucci, Kaku, Khalifa, and Bluno infiltrate Water 7 in an undercover mission to locate the blueprints of Pluton. Nico Robin, aged 25, enters the Grand Line. With his disease catching up to him, Hirolug realizes he has little to live left. He is tricked by Wapol to be executed but decides to take his own life instead, delivering a final speech where he believes his dream will live on. Kureha decides to continue his research and takes in Chopper. Head of the Royal Drum Guards Dalton protests against Wapol for his actions but loses against him and is imprisoned. Chopper begins researching the additional potential transformations of a Zoan type by beginning the development of the Rumble Ball. After nearly 5 decades of drifting, Brook's ship comes across Gecko Moria's Thriller Bark. There, his shadow is stolen and given to the corpse of Ryuma that Moria stole 16 years before from Wano. Brook sets Thriller Bark into a nightmare as he finds the weakness to the zombies and releases many shadows, coming to be feared by the island zombies as the Humming Swordsman. He manages to escape but is left adrift again, now without a shadow. 6 years ago, Nico Robin joins Baroque Works under Crocodile. Iceberg is nominated for mayor of Water 7 and eventually wins the election. Cady Flam, believed by all to be dead, returns to Water 7. Iceberg entrusts him with the blueprints of Pluton and requests him to start new life under the name Franky. Iceberg begs him to flee the island, but Franky refuses and instead starts forming the gang Franky Family over the next year. In the one-man revolution, King Bekori torments the Sorbet Kingdom by attempting once more to divide the country in half, setting up a great burning to the island's southern side, inspired by the burning of the Great Terminal 6 years prior. Kuma defeats and later kills Bekori to free the country, becoming the country's king, though he cedes power to King Bulldog. However, the next papers frame Kuma as a despot who took over the throne by force, nicknaming him the Tyrant, and forcing him to escape to sea to become a pirate. Kuma sails the seas for the next 2 years, looking for a cure for Bonnie. Toko is born in the Wano country and soon becomes an orphan, but is taken in by Yasuye, who raises her as his own daughter. 5 years ago, a 17-year-old Portuguese DA set sail from Dawn Island to begin his adventure. He ends up stranded on Six's Island, where he meets a man under the name Mas Deuce, and together with him he founds the Spade Pirates after eating the Mera Mera Nomi. Ace would rise in infamy as he would sail across the Grand Line while building up a crew. Tired of his lifestyle as a pirate, Kuro fakes his death by letting one of his crewmates, Nugere Yainu, be executed in his place, fooling the world about his death. Marine Morgan is promoted for being believed to have captured Captain Kuro. Kuro is taken in by a rich estate in Silver Village and becomes its butler, but devises a plan to take over its wealth in 3 years' time. Franky begins an attempt to amass 200 million belly with his Franky family in order to acquire Adam Tree Wood to build his dream ship. The Nox pirates attempt to infiltrate Whole Cake Island to steal Big Mom's poneglyphs, but the plan fails and they are captured. Zeppo loses his lifespan and dies, but Pedro manages to bargain by offering his eye to retain just enough lifespan to live a little longer. He is freed and allowed to return to Zou. Sometime after having run away from the Charlotte family and her engagement with Prince Loki of Elbaf, Charlotte Lola, now captain of the Lolling Pirates, arrives with her crew at Fishman Island. Upon landing a thriller bark, Lola and the members of the Lolling Pirates lose their shadows to Gecko Moria, remaining stranded on the island in an attempt to recover them. In the Alabasta Drought, a great drought begins in the Alabasta Kingdom. This drought has been secretly created by the Baroque works through the use of dance powder as a way to create unrest in the country. Around 4 years ago, Eustace Captain Kidd unites the 4 gangs of his home kingdom in South Blue after the royalist gang ruling over the country kills his friend Victoria, deposing them from their rule. Alongside the other gang leaders, Killer, Heat, and Wire, Kidd forms the Kidd Pirates and sets out to sea, earning notoriety in the South. After creating chaos among the 5 families of the West by targeting the leaders of the families and rival gangs, Capone Gang Beige becomes a pirate and earns infamy in the West. 4 years ago, Trafalgar Law becomes renowned in the North Blue as the captain of the Har Pirates, and Pirate Captain Cavendish achieves a lot of fame through his accomplishments. 5 to 4 years ago, Ace enters the New World as a supernova. There he eventually tracks down and meets up with Shanks and thanks him for everything he did for Luffy as a kid. 4 years ago again, the 1520 Reverie takes place. A cargo of dance powder is discovered in Nanohana as well, sent under the orders of the king. This creates civil unrest, leading to the start of a rebellion in Alabasta. In reality, the accident was staged by Baroque works in order to frame the king. Within Alabasta as well, Erumalu becomes a ghost town because of the drought, and Yuba approaches a similar fate too, sending the country down a spiral of despair. Princess Vivi and Royal Guard Captain Igaram of Alabasta then join Baroque works undercover in an attempt to find out more about its secret leader. In the Punk Hazard incident, Vegapunk's assistant Caesar Clown develops a weapon of mass destruction on Punk Hazard. Vegapunk has him arrested for this, but in a last-ditch effort, Caesar detonates the bomb, destroying the ecosystem of Punk Hazard and laying waste to it. Vegapunk and the other government agents evacuate, but the prisoners left behind on the island are ravaged by the effects of the weapon. Caesar is arrested but manages to escape from his prison ship. Ace is offered a warlord position but rejects it. Because of him, a warlord position is left vacant. In the Pacifista project, Kuma reunites with Dragon, who recommends him to take Bunny to Vegapunk in order to heal her. Vegapunk, who just relocated from Punk Hazard to an island that would be known in the future as Egghead, agrees to heal Bunny, but asks Kuma in exchange to let him clone his body, giving start to the Pacifista project. However, Saint Saturn finds out about the project and demands Kuma become a warlord and erase his will as a condition for Bunny's surgery. Kuma accepts and begins his 2-year cyborg body conversion, as does Bunny's treatment. Meanwhile, Bell Betty becomes the commander of the Eastern Revolutionary Army, and East Blue fisherman Kobe is abducted by pirate Captain Alvida and is forced to become her chore boy. The Spade Pirates shipwreck at the Wano country and help a famished Amigasa village where Ace meets a young Otama. Ace attempts to go to Onigashima to defeat Kaido for Tama's sake, but the Emperor has left on an expedition, so Ace instead finds and befriends Yamato. The two of them vow to one day meet again as Yamato makes a vivid card of Ace. In search of Whitebeard's head, Ace is confronted by Jinbei and the two duel it out for 5 days. The two collapse but are ambushed by Whitebeard, who takes a liking to Ace and forces him into his crew. Ace struggles to accept Whitebeard as his captain, but over time he would become loyal and decide to become his son. Ace is eventually promoted to 2nd Division Commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. 3 years ago, having spent 6 months on a head as Vegapunk cured Bunny's disease, she and Kuma grow closer with the doctors Sentomaru and Kizaru. After the 6 months, Bunny's treatment is completed, so she is sent back to the Sorbet Kingdom, where the Cypher Pole monitors her to ensure she and Kuma don't meet again, Bunny completely unaware of the truth. Bartholomew Kuma then becomes one of the 7 royal sea warlords as per the condition imposed by Saturn, and begins working under orders from the government. Cavendish becomes a supernova with a 280 million belly bounty and enters the New World. He enjoys a lot of fame and popularity. Aramaki, who would become an admiral in the future, begins to fast and decides to not bother to eat for the next 3 years since his Mori Mori no Mi fruit lets him survive on photosynthesis alone. While in the East Blue, Kuma visits the Goa Kingdom to look at Luffy from afar, and meanwhile, having his brain growing too big due to his Nomi Nomi powers, Vegapunk cuts off his brain to create Punk Records. This would eventually further lead to splitting into 6 clones: Shaka, Lilith, Edison, Pythagoras, Atlas, and York. Meanwhile, Caesar returns to Punk Hazard, framing Vegapunk for the incident and acting as a savior to the inmates by helping them recover, earning their loyalty. He begins using Punk Hazard as a base of operations for his clandestine research. He condensates the lethal gas and eventually gives life to it through a Dal fruit as the living weapon Smiley to use it at a later point. Big Mom requests Caesar to develop a gigantification drug, so Caesar asks Joker for help in attaining subjects. An undercover Vice Admiral Virgo, now chief of G5, helps kidnap children from nearby villages and frames their disappearances as accidents at sea. In spite of these, Caesar is unable to do much but gigantify some of the children at the cost of their lifespan, so he just gives up and spends the fun money on booze and girls without letting Big Mom know. Based on Vegapunk's artificial Dalford research, Caesar also invents Smile fruits, artificial zoan fruits with a low success rate and inconsistent results. Nevertheless, he sells his SAD to Doflamingo, who has been covering for him under his alias as Joker. Doflamingo builds an artificial Dalford factory in Dress Rosa to resell the fruits to interested buyers, particularly Kaido, who dreams to build an army of Dalfruit users. 3 to 1 years ago, Caesar ends up selling to Kaido the test subjects from Punk Hazard, who were failed attempts at creating artificial ancient giants, whom Kaido makes his division of numbers. Kaido also eventually acquires a lethal gas weapon called Koro from Caesar. Back to 3 years ago, Uta finds a bunch of Denden Mushi belonging to the SSG, Vegapunk's research group, shipwrecked by the shores of Elysia, and discovers the Era prototype capable of live streaming footage to across the world. Uta begins to record herself and her songs to broadcast them to the world. She begins to grow fans as she slowly ascends to become the world's most famous idol. Kaya's parents of the Sirp village estate pass away due to illness, leaving her daughter in a depressive state that develops into sickness. On September 1st, Bunny celebrates her 9th birthday in the Sorbet Kingdom but grows depressed at not receiving any letters from Kuma. Thatch gets his hands on the Yami Yami no Mi but teaches Force to kill him in order to get the fruit from him. Finally, having attained the fruit of his dreams, he runs away from the Whitebeard pirates to form his own crew, the Blackbeard pirates. After Ace finds out about Thatch's death, he is outraged and goes on a hunt after Blackbeard, despite Whitebeard's warnings. Teach, now informed the Blackbeard pirates, raids the Drum Kingdom. A terrified King Wapol flees the island with his men, abandoning his people but in turn freeing them from his tyranny. Around October, Rayleigh leaves Shaggy's rip-off bar for Lil to go on a gambling spree over the next 6 months, and around November, Orange Town resident Hawker grows ill and is hospitalized. He soon after passes away, leaving his dog Shushu to protect his pet food store. 2 years ago, the Broccoli War erupts on Broccoli Island. Around January-March, Nero joins CP9 as its newest member. Around January-February, after entering the Grand Line and only surviving there for a week, the Creek Pirates' armada is almost entirely wiped out by Dracul Mihawk. The Creek Pirates barely make it back alive to the East Blue, and Gin diverts the attention of the Marines by posing as Creek and letting himself get captured. Around January-February, Roronoa Zoro kills Soto, the pet wolf of Morgan's son Halmepo, to save the life of a young girl called Rika, and is imprisoned by the Marines on a crucifix for a month as punishment. Zoro makes a promise with Helmeppo that if he can survive 1 month without food, he'll be let free, though Helmeppo never intends to keep the promise. Around February, after a year of recovery in Sorbet, Bunny becomes fully healed from her Sapphire scales. However, the government doesn't want to let her go, so she escapes and sets out to sea as a pirate to look after her father, now under the name of Jewelry Bunny. And finally, 2 years ago, on year 1522 of Kaienreiki, around February, Monkey D. Luffy, now 17 years old, set sail from Fuchsia Village in his journey to become the Pirate King. Okay, so for a little bit of context, Luffy's journey begins in the year 1522. For a long while, we could trace most of Luffy's journey across the years since the vast majority of the Great Timeskip is all connected by each of the text boxes Oda would add to indicate the passing of time. But we didn't have a specific reference of when in the year it was. However, this all changed with the release of the Vivre Card databook, where Oda provided actual hard dates for several key events in the Great Timeskip, which all line up perfectly with the timeline referenced in the manga. This gives us a point of reference for Luffy's pre-timeskip journey, which spans from February to April-May. Now, this presents a couple of issues. For one, I've often seen people surprised that Luffy's initial journey was only 3 months, as to some it doesn't make his bonds with the Straw Hats feel special anymore. But regardless of if you like it or not, it has been confirmed by both the manga and Oda's newly provided timeline dates. There's no room for doubt here, so we just need to make peace with it one way or the other. The other issue is that at first this would seem to contradict the fact that Luffy is 17. If the journey started on February prior to Luffy's birthday on May the 5th, then Luffy would have to be 16 years old, not 17 as he stated at the start of the series. But see, this makes sense because the One Piece world uses the birthday system that was originally used in older Japan. You see, prior to the westernization of the 20th century, Japan used a birthday system where everyone's age would go up on New Year's. Regardless of when your birthday would be and when you would celebrate it, everyone's age grew up with the year, not based on the year of your birth. So for example, if Luffy's born on May the 5th, he still turns 17 on January the 1st, making him 17 by the time he started his journey. This also explains why none of the Straw Hats age by 1 year across their journey, as it all takes place across the same year, and this system is applied to flashbacks and everything else as well. Birthdays are still celebrated as a moment of growth, but categorically characters numerically age with every year, which keeps things simpler. Oda likely went with this system because it would otherwise be an absolute nightmare to keep track of everybody's ages respective to the current date, so let's follow along with it as we follow young 17-year-old Luffy's adventures. Though you're likely familiar with the story from here on out, you may be surprised by how long some arcs really are and over which days they take place, so I encourage you to keep watching. And again, if you have any further doubts, you can check all the citations and references on my website. Okay, let's go! So soon after departing, Luffy gets sucked in a whirlpool but manages to survive within a barrel and meets Kobe on Goat Island, whom he liberates from Alvida. Luffy and Kobe then land at Shell's Town on Yotsuba Island, where they meet Roronoa Zoro, who has been arrested for the past 9 days. Luffy helps free him in exchange for joining his crew, and the two help liberate Shell's Town. Luffy and Zoro land at Orange Town on the Organ Archipelago, where they meet Nami, who had been stealing from the Buggy Pirates, and together they take down the crew, liberating Orange Town and helping bring closure to Shushu's loss. Nami joins the crew as the navigator. Luffy and Nami land on Rare Animal Island, where they meet Gaimon, helping him find the truth about the remaining treasure chests on the island. Around February 11th, Luffy's group lands at Sir Village on the Gecko Archipelago, where they meet Usopp. Together they found out about Kura's plot to attack the village, but none of the villagers believe Usopp to his habits as a liar. The next day, on February 12th, in the early morning, they defeat the Black Cat Pirates. Then they leave the archipelago, but Kaya provides them with a new ship that had been built by Mary, the Going Mary, and Usopp joins the crew. They later meet Johnny and Yosaku, Zoro's former bounty hunting friends, and save Yosaku from scurvy. Around February the 14th, the Straw Hats arrive at the Barati, where Luffy is roped into dishwashing for a year after he accidentally damages the ship. Sanji feeds a starving Gin who escaped from the Marines, but he brings back Don Krieg and his other crew members to feed them, who take advantage of the situation to attack and seize the Barati. At the same time, Nami steals the Going Merry and runs away, and Mihawk comes chasing after Krieg. Zoro challenges Mihawk to a duel to achieve his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman, but is unable to surpass him and is seriously scarred, but Mihawk encourages to come after him again someday. Luffy and Sanji then settle things by defeating Krieg's fleet, and Gin is fatally poisoned, but he peacefully accepts his fate. Sanji soon after joins Luffy's crew as his cook, as he says to follow after Luffy to find the All Blue. Around February 15th, in the liberation of Konomi, Luffy and Sanji arrive at the Konomi Archipelago to catch up with the others, and find out about Nami's allegiance to the Arlong Pirates. Nami has finished gathering her 100 million belly to pay to Arlong to buy her village, but Arlong betrays her and takes the money, leading Nami to have a breakdown. Nami asks Luffy for help, so the crew marches to Arlong Park to take down his crew. After a long battle, Luffy demolishes Arlong Park and puts an end to Arlong's rule, as the Fishmen are all all arrested. Celebrations ensue over the archipelago overnight. On February the 16th, on the news, 300,000 soldiers of the real army of Alabasta switch sides to the revolutionaries, steering the fires of an upcoming civil war. On February the 18th, on the news, another coup d'etat takes place in Vera. Luffy's also issued his first 30 million belly bounty. Having left the Konomi archipelago, Luffy's crew lands at Lockdown on that same day, where Buggy and Alvida return with a revenge and attempt to execute Luffy in the same spot Roger died, but he is saved by a fateful bolt of lightning. Marine Captain Smoker gives chase after Luffy, but Dragon arrives on the island to help his son escape. Around February 18th, at Robaldon Drum Island, after Ace fails to find Blackbeard, he asks the locals to deliver a message to Luffy that he'll be waiting in Alabasta. He encounters Whitebeard and Jinbe again and shows them Luffy's bounty. At the same time, Bonnie, now Pirate Captain Jewelry Bonnie, looks after Kuma but is unable to meet up with him. She decides to instead go looking for Nika in the meantime. Still on the same day, February 18th, Luffy's crew crosses Reverse Mountain and arrives at the Grand Line, where they come across the island whale Laboon, with whom Luffy makes a new promise to meet again someday. They also meet Mr. Nine and Miss Wednesday, who request them to take them to Whiskey Peak. Later that day, Luffy's crew land at Whiskey Peak on Cactus Island. They are tricked by the hospitality of the Baroque work agents, but Zoro sees through their plans and takes on about 100 of their bounty hunters. As morning comes on February the 19th, Mr. Five and Miss Valentine come to Whiskey Peak to take Princess Miss Wednesday captive, as she is the princess of Alabasta Nefertari Vivi undercover, but Igaram asks Luffy's crew to escort her back to her home country. They agree as Vivi and her pet Karu join the crew. They are intercepted by Nico Robin, or Agent Miss All Sunday now, but she lets them set sail ahead to the next island. Luffy's crew land on Little Garden later that day as they meet the giants Dory and Brogy, who have been dueling for the past 100 years. Mr. 3 and other Baroque Works agents try to take the heads of the giants, but their plans are foiled and the crew moves on thanks to an eternal post to Alabasta Sanji acquired from them. However, Nami falls ill shortly after departing the island from a Kestia bite she just received. On February the 20th, in search of a doctor, Luffy's crew comes across the Bleaking Pirates and a runaway Wappo, who assault their ship but swiftly deal with them. On February the 21st, Luffy's crew lands at Drum Island, where in search of a doctor, Luffy climbs the Drum Rockies to have Dr. Kureha save Nami's life. Wappo returns to the island to retake his kingdom, but Luffy drives him away thanks to Chopper, who ends up joining his crew as a doctor. Kureha sets off Dr. Hirolux chemicals in the air to create Hirolux Sakura, which would become known as what signaled the birth for the new free Sakura Kingdom. On February 26th, en route to Alabasta, Luffy's crew has a chance encounter with Mr. 2 Bonkere, marking the beginning of a long friendship. On March the 2nd, Luffy's crew lands at Alabasta to attempt to defuse the rebellion Crocodile and Baroque Works have been steering. There, Luffy briefly meets with Ace before they part ways again, and they make for Yuba to meet with the rebels through a long trek across the desert. But while they get there late in the night, Vivi finds out the rebels aren't there anymore. On March the 3rd, Luffy's crew decides to target Crocodile directly as they head for rain dinners, while the rebel forces begin their preparations to take the capital Alubarna in Operation Utopia. On March the 4th, in the Alabasta Civil War, Crocodile attempts to send the country into a big civil war to overtake it and seize the weapon Pluton detailed in its poneglyph. Luffy's crew reached rain dinners early in the morning and attempt to stop Crocodile, but Luffy is defeated. As the rebels arrive at Alubarna, an all-out civil war breaks out in the capital. Crocodile and Robin find the poneglyph of Pluton, and Crocodile nearly wipes out Alubarna with a massive bomb, but thanks to the combined efforts of the crew, his plans are foiled and he is defeated. Crocodile is arrested by the Marines as rain finally falls upon Alabasta once again. The next day, on March the 5th, the government covers up Crocodile's actions by framing it as the Marines led by Smoker having subjugated Baroque Works, without publicly acknowledging the efforts of Luffy's crew. The crew comes to be publicly known as the Straw Hat Pirates after Smoker names them in his report. Around March the 5th, hearing of the Alabasta incident, Isho has doubts about the necessity of the warlord system. On March the 7th, Luffy wakes up after 3 days of sleeping and the Straw Hats celebrate with a feast in the Royal Palace. At midnight, the Straw Hats leave the Royal Palace to escape from the island. Luffy is issued a 100 million belly bounty, while Zoro gets his first bounty too. On March the 8th, the Straw Hats manage to escape Alabasta thanks to Mr. 2 who covers for them. At noon, they meet with Vivi on the coast for a final farewell, promising to remain crewmates if they should meet again one day. On that same day still, Ace stumbles upon Buggy's ship while traveling, but the two simply decide to party together. Rockstar delivers a message from Shanks to Whitebeard, but Whitebeard requests for an in-person meeting. The world government hosts a summit at Marijois to discuss the replacement for Crocodile in the Seven Sea Warlords, with Kuma, Doflamingo, and Mihawk attending. Lafitte infiltrates the meeting to propose his captain Blackbeard as the next warlord. As soon as the Straw Hats leave Alabasta on that same day, they realize that Nico Robin stowed away on the ship, so Luffy accepts to let her join his crew. Suddenly though, the Saint Breeze falls on them from a sky island, and so resolving to go to the island, the Straw Hats head to the nearby Jaya. Luffy first meets Marshal D. Teach, and later Montblanc Cricket, who decides to aid them in reaching the Sky Island. Over the morning of the next day, March the 9th, Luffy beats down Bellamy after he stole some gold from Cricket and manages to return to the Mary to head to Sky Island. The crew manages to ride the knock-up stream as they reach Skypiea. There, however, they are persecuted by God Enel, and after being separated and put through several trials, the crew manages to regroup. They realize that the City of Gold likely does exist in Skypiea and decide to set their sights on it as they party over the night. On March the 10th, the next day, the Sky War finally reaches its finale. The Straw Hats set out in Skypiea in search of the City of Gold, however they get entangled in the climax of the Sky War as the Shandians make their attack on Enel, and the god decides to play out a survival game where only a few are allowed to survive. Using the Arc Maxim he built over the past 6 years, Enel plans to head to the moon, the fairy birth of Sky Legends, and plans to see Skypiea as he leaves it. Luffy, however, manages to defeat Enel and ring the Golden Bell, proving to Cricket that the City of Gold did exist in the sky. The Sky War finally comes to an end after 400 years, as the people of the sky all come together to celebrate and party hand in hand. Around March the 10th, Enel manages to make his escape from the Arc Maxim and eventually manages to reach the moon for good, where he finds the ancient city of Burka and the Automata race, learning of his heritage. On March the 11th, the next day, Robin finds the poneglyph on the Golden Belfry detailing the location of Poseidon with Roger's message, and together with the Straw Hats, they all leave Sky Island. As they fall down to the Blue Sea once again, they shortly after land on Long Ring Long Land, where they rescue Tonjit from his stilts. They are challenged by the Foxy Pirates in a Davy Back fight, but they emerge successful and are able to keep their crewmates, marking the first loss in Fox's long streak. However, they are ambushed by Admiral Aokiji, who worries Robin may have gotten too dangerous, but is ultimately willing to let them go. On March the 16th, having taken 4 full days to let Luffy and Robin recover from their clash with Aokiji, the Straw Hats finally set sail from Long Ring Long Land. On March the 18th, the Straw Hats come across the sea train at Water 7, where they search for a shipwright to repair their ship. However, the foremen of Galila tell them that the Going Merry is beyond repair. Furthermore, part of the repair money is stolen from Usopp by the Franky family, and Robin goes missing. Usopp is unable to part ways with the Merry and feels insecure about being abandoned as well, so he challenges Luffy to a duel for the ship at 10 PM. Luffy inevitably wins, but lets Usopp have the Merry, as Usopp leaves the crew in a painful fallout. On March 19th, the next day, an assassination attempt is made on Mayor Iceberg of Water 7 by Robin, who is being coerced by CP9 into assisting them in locating the blueprints of Pluton Iceberg gave to Franky. The Straw Hats get entangled in the incident and give chase to Robin and Franky on the sea train headed to Enies Lobby over the next morning. On March the 20th, in the Enies Lobby incident, the Straw Hats, with the help of the Franky family and some Galila members, storm Enies Lobby to rescue Robin and Franky. In an unprecedented assault on the Island of Justice, for the first time in 800 years, the Straw Hats clash against CP9, but their leader Spandam accidentally summons a Buster Call on Enies Lobby, reducing the island to ashes. Franky burns the blueprints of Pluton, and the Straw Hats defeat all the CP9 members and rob Lucci among them. During the incident, the Straw Hats successfully rescue Robin and Franky, and the Going Merry comes back to rescue them from Enies Lobby. As the ship finally breaks down, the Straw Hats give it a proper funeral. Around March the 20th, the defeated CP9 members are able to escape Enies Lobby, and they raise funds to afford an operation to save Lucci at St. Poplar. The government demotes them for their failure, but they eventually end up being given a second chance and are eventually hired as CP0 agents. Around March, Miss Golden Week helps lead a breakout of the imprisoned Baroque Works members, helping most of the frontier agents escape, who decide to retire to a more quiet life in a new Spider's Cafe. Crocodile and Das Bones refuse to escape, and alongside Mr. 2 and Mr. 3, who also got captured, they are all transferred to Impel Down. On March the 22nd, a couple days after Enies Lobby, Garp comes to visit Luffy at Water 7. Later in the day, the Straw Hats throw a massive party with the people of the island. On the same day, Whitebeard and Shanks meet as the latter requests to stop Ace from going after Blackbeard. Whitebeard refuses as the two emperors briefly clash, and at the same time, in the duel at Banado Island, Ace finally locates Blackbeard and clashes against him as revenge for Thatch's death. However, after an intense duel, Blackbeard emerges victorious and would go on to give Ace as a prisoner to the Marines in exchange for a warlord position. This event would serve as the trigger of the upcoming Summit conflict. On March the 23rd, the Straw Hats wait patiently for Franky to finish building their new ship. The Enies Lobby incident is reported in the newspaper. A couple days later, on March the 25th, the Straw Hats are issued new bounties in the news, with Luffy reaching a 300 million belly bounty. The new ship of the Straw Hat pirates, the Thousand Sunny, is completed as the crew leaves Water 7 behind. Around March the 25th, given Sanji's new bounty, Judge has him hunted down, but given the sketch on it, Duvel is hunted instead by accident, becoming persecuted by Marines and bounty hunters alike. Around March the 25th, entering the Florian Triangle, the Straw Hats meet Brook and are trapped in Thriller Bark, where Gecko Moria attempts to steal their shadows. Over a long night, the crew clashes against Mori's forces to retake their shadows. Around March the 26th, on the news, Portugas the Ace has been jailed in Impel Down following his defeat at the hands of Blackbeard, resulting in Ticha's promotion to Sea Warlord in Crocodile's place. The Straw Hats successfully defeat Moria and his zombies, such as a revived Ryuma and Ors, before the break of dawn, resulting in all of Moria's shadows returning to their original owners. Kuma confronts the weakened Straw Hats to capture Luffy, but Zoro sacrifices himself to protect his captain, suffering grievous wounds in the process but barely surviving. Moria and his minions manage to escape the island in a quick getaway. Around March the 27th, the next day, Luffy and the others party at Thriller Bark as Brook joins the Straw Hat Pirates. And a couple days later, around March the 29th, the Straw Hat Pirates leave Thriller Bark. Luffy sees Ace's Vivre card beginning to burn up, but decides to not worry much about it, unaware of the fate befalling Ace. Now, the events of the Summit War Saga, we don't have the exact specific days, but we know they vaguely happen somewhere around April, so to keep track, instead of specific dates, I'm gonna use like Summit War days. So in this case, on the first day of the Summit War Saga, on the Celestial Dragon incident, the Straw Hats reach the Red Line and meet the mermaid Kami. They help her rescue Hachan from the Flying Fish Riders and are led to the Sabaody archipelago to meet Silver's Rayleigh, who agrees to coat their ship. However, Kami is captured by slave traders and Luffy ends up punching Celestial Dragon Sei Charlos while saving her, sparking the start of a big incident. Kuma witnesses this and is inspired by Luffy's actions. Admiral Kizaru is summoned to the island to take care of the Straw Hats, and overwhelmed by strong enemies, Kuma saves them from the brink of defeat by sending them away to faraway islands. In the news, Portugas the Ace's execution and Marineford in 9 days is also announced. In between Summit War Day 2 to 9, Dr. Vegapunk finalizes the operations on Kuma's body, fully removing his sense of self and essentially killing him. Kuma requests Vegapunk to program him to him one last order to protect the ship of the Straw Hats until one of them returns. On Summit War Day 2, Luffy lands at Amazon Lily after being sent there by Kuma. After eating some poisonous mushrooms, he is rescued by the Kuja but jailed after being discovered to be a man. On Summit War Day 3, Luffy awakens in a jail at Amazon Lily and escapes for a while, but after he encounters Hancock, he is forced to fight the Kuja in a coliseum. After proving his resolve, Luffy earns the tribe's trust and Hancock's love. Across Summit War Day 2 to 4, the other Straw Hats are sent to different corners of the world by Kuma. In Summit War Day 5, early in the morning, Luffy departs with Hancock after learning of Ace's execution, as she uses her warlord position to help take Luffy towards Impel Down. On Summit War Day 10, at 6 AM, Hancock helps smuggle Luffy into Impel Down just one day ahead of Ace's execution. As he infiltrates the prison, he regroups with Buggy, Mr. 3 and Mr. 2, but is ultimately defeated and fatally poisoned by Warden Magellan. Mr. 2 desperately searches for Ivankov in the prison, and at 1 PM the two are barely rescued by Inazuma. Over the next 10 hours, Mr. 2 wakes up as Luffy painfully recovers from the poison. On Summit War Day 10 as well, Kaido heads to Marineford with some of his men, including King, to go after Whitebeard. However, the red-haired pirates stop them in their tracks, forcing them to back away for the moment being. On Summit War Day 11, early in the morning at 8 AM, Luffy recovers from his toxins. He rushes to save Ace, but he has already been escorted out of Impel Down, so he and the rest of prisoners he has allied with, including Ivankov, Crocodile, and Jinbei, escape from Impel Down, though Mr. 2 stays behind to ensure their escape. At the same time, Blackbeard makes use of his warlord position to infiltrate Impel Down, breaking out several of its level 6 prisoners to recruit new members to his crew, leading to an unprecedented mass breakout in Impel Down. Luffy gives chase to Ace by heading to Marineford. On that same day, the Summit War takes place. The Marines are set to execute Ace at 3 PM at Marineford. As they expected, the Whitebeard pirates and their fleet show up to retake Ace, sparking the Summit War that would unfold over the following day, with the Emperor's forces clashing with the Marines and the remaining 5 warlords. Over a grueling war, Luffy manages to succeed in freeing his brother, but ultimately Portugas the Ace is killed by Admiral Akainu as he tried to protect his brother. Blackbeard storms Marineford after his raid on Impel Down and kills Whitebeard as well, managing to steal his fruit by becoming the first man to have eaten 2 devil fruits. The war spirals out of control, but is stopped thanks to the efforts of Kobe and Shanks, who arrives on the battlefield to end the war. Luffy manages to escape the battlegrounds thanks to help of Trafalgar Law. On April of 1422, 2 years ago, with the conclusion of the Summit War, the Great Pirate Era ends to give rise to a new era that some would call the Era of the Worst, named after the worst generation. Still on Summit War Day 11, the day of the war, right after the war wraps up, Doflamingo tries to execute Moria under orders from CP0, as Moria has been decided to be demoted from being a warlord by King Emu. Moria, however, manages to escape thanks to Absalom's invisibility powers. On the news, the events of the Summit War are reported. Ace being the son of Roger and Luffy being the son of Dragon is also revealed publicly too. Moria's demotion is covered up as him dying in the war, and the level 6 Impel Down incident is covered up by the government as well. Somewhere around April or May, around Summit War Day 25, Luffy awakens at Amazon Lily after about a couple of weeks and struggles to cope with the death of his brother. However, thanks to Jinbei's help, he manages to move on and decides to regroup with his crew. Rayleigh, however, arrives on the island and offers Luffy to train for 2 years to grow stronger. Around Summit War Day 26 to 30, basically less than a month after the events of the Sabaody arc, as programmed him by Vegapunk upon request, Kuma begins guarding the Sunny and assists Hatchin and the Rosy Life Riders in protecting it. Buggy receives an invitation from the government to join the 7 warlords, which he accepts. In the nightmare of Bulge Moor, while trying to escape from Vegapunk's laboratory in Karakuri Island, Franky accidentally sets off its self-destruction mechanism, destroying many of the inventor's precious blueprints and creations. Thanks to it, however, Franky discovers a second laboratory hidden within the mountain where he begins to study Vegapunk's creations. By accidentally setting himself on fire a few days later though, he ends up creating the legend of the secret burning beast of Bulgemore as well. At the same time, Jewelry Bunny is captured by the Blackbeard pirates in the New World after trying to look for Vegapunk. She's sold off to the government but later manages to escape alone from the battleship escorting her. Still under a month after the events at Sabaody, after returning to Marineford to deliver a hidden message to his crew through the news, Luffy begins training at Rusukaina with Rayleigh, as all the Straw Hats vow to become stronger over the time skip in the next 2 years. After the time skip begins, still 2 years ago, Sengoku officially steps down as Fleet Admiral, leaving his seat vacant. Garp also retires from the front lines to train new recruits. Kuzan and Sakazuki have a duel on Punk Hazard, unaware of Caesar and his men hiding on the island, to determine who will become the next Marine Fleet Admiral. The duel ensues for 10 days to the point it permanently alters the climate of the island into half frozen and half molten. Sakazuki emerges victorious but spares Kuzan, however the latter leaves the Marines. Following his defeat from Basil Hawkins at Foot Volton, Brownbeard escapes and lands on Punk Hazard, where he's saved by Caesar Clown, becoming his subordinate. The Far Tank pirates enter Todd Land but surrender to the Big Mom pirates and agree to join their crew, marred by Beige's marriage with Charlotte Chiffon. Franky also begins construction on the mecha robot of his dreams, the Franky Shogun. At some point in the time skip, between 2 to 0 years ago, due to his involvement in the Summit War, Luffy gets an increased 400 million belly bounty. Many of the War's generation members have their bounty increased over the 2 years as well for various reasons. In the World Military Draft, Issho and Aramaki are drafted into the Marines as Admiral Fujitora and Ryukuyu to fill the 2 vacant admiral spots. With Whitebeard's death, the Fishman Island is left without a protectorate, so Big Mom establishes a deal with the Ryugu Kingdom to make it her territory in exchange for a monthly supply of sweets. In the Rocky Port incident, Trafalgar Law plots an incident on the rocky port of Hachinosu Island, where he steals the heart of 100 pirates there, bringing them to Marine headquarters in exchange for a warlord position. Whitebeard takes advantage of the incident to the throne of Choku and takes control of Hachinosu, while Kobe protects the lives of civilians and comes to be known as the hero of Rocky Port. Edward Weevil, the alleged son of Whitebeard, becomes a warlord. He begins hunting down elite captains of the Whitebeard pirates in search of Whitebeard's treasure. The on-air pirates attack Todd Land, but Apu and his crew are forced to retreat. Around this time, he also ends up joining the base pirates, though this never makes the news as Apu begins working undercover for Kaido. And the Kid pirates get into conflict with the Red Hair pirates, where Ben Beckman takes Kid's arm before he can even see Shanks. In 1523, or 1 year ago, Capon Pez is born as the son of Beige and Chiffon. Beige begins planning out his scheme to take Big Mom's head in an assassination plot, which she charts over the next year. The Drake infiltrates the Beast Pirates as an undercover marine by becoming a headliner. On Kaido's orders, he attacks Amigasa village, killing its samurai and wiping out almost the whole village. In the Payback War, Marco and the remnants of the Whitebeard pirates join forces to take down the Blackbeard pirates, but suffer a crushing defeat, causing the members of the crew to split and disband. Emerging as the winner of the war, Blackbeard becomes acknowledged as one of the 4 emperors in Whitebeard's place. On a certain island in the New World, Kuzan briefly clashes with the Blackbeard pirates. However, Teach is able to convince him into joining his crew, and Kuzan eventually becomes the 10th Titanic captain. Bartolomeo, who had set out to see inspired by Luffy, becomes a supernova by entering the New World. The Marines locate the Thousand Sun Sabaody and lead an attack to seize it, injuring Duval and Hatchan to the point they are unable to guard it anymore. Kuma, however, who had been guarding the ship alongside them for the past year, stands his ground and manages to successfully fend them off and protect the Sunny. Duval and Hatchan retire to look after their wounds, with Hatchan returning to Fishman Island. After marrying into the royal family of Goa, Sterry becomes king of Goa after the mysterious death of the king and prince. Around August, Rayleigh leaves Rusukaina to let Luffy finish his training on his own, and around December, Beppo arrives at Zou to wait for his captain Trafalgar Law's arrival. Finally, in 1524, the present year, around January, Punk 6 York contacts the 5 Elder Planets to inform them that Vegapunk is investigating the Void Sentry. The government decides to investigate. Also around January, the Kid pirates infiltrate Todland, and Kid steals a road poneglyph rubbing from one of Big Mom's commanders after injuring them, making a successful escape and sinking 2 of Big Mom's ships in the process. Smoker and Fujitora also meet, the former expressing his grievances with the warlord system, wishing it to be abolished. This helps motivate Fujitora towards achieving the disbandment of the warlord system. Between January and February, Momonosuke, Kinemon, Kanjuro, Raizo, and Kiku land 20 years in the future after Toki sent them forward in time. Kiku stays behind in Wano while the rest leave the country to Zou to ask the Ming for help. However, they shipwreck at sea, so only Raizo makes it to the island. The other 3 are stranded on Rosa, where Doflamingo attempts to capture them on Kaido's orders, but Kanjuro lets himself get captured to let Kinemon run after Momonosuke, who accidentally got shipped to Punk Hazard alongside other children to be used as experiments. Kinemon makes it to the island but is cut into pieces by Trafalgar Law. Momonosuke instead ends up eating Vegapunk's artificial copy of Kaido's fruit by accident. Also between January and February, Urouge invades Todland and manages to successfully defeat Swing Commander Snack, resulting in his demotion. Urouge is however defeated as Commander Cracker arrives, forcing him to retreat and recover from his wounds on the balloon terminal. Around January the 26th to the 28th, Franky arrives at the Sunny and finds Kuma, who completes his mission. In February, having finished his mission, Kuma leaves the Sabaody archipelago. The Celestial Dragons take him to Marijua to become a slave once again for having assisted the escape of the Straw Hats 2 years prior. Also around February, given Wapple's rise to power and wealth over the past 2 years, the royal nobles give him a territory to rule over, giving birth to the evil Black Drum Kingdom. In February, the government sends a CP5 ship to Egghead to investigate York's claims that Vegapunk is researching the Void Sentry but are unable to find any proof. Frustrated by this, York kidnaps the CP5 agents to bait the government into investigating further. On the news, Fleet Admiral Sakazuki around this time has finally finished fully switching the positions of Marine headquarters from Marineford to G1 in the New World, and G1 onto Marineford to keep a closer hand on the New World. On February the 1st, the Beast Pirates, led by Jack, invade Zou in an attempt to capture Raizo after the Deep Kanjuro gave them that he was on the island. The Mink are unwilling to hand him over, resulting in the start of a large battle of attrition. Nemuro Black begins gathering men in the Sabaody Archipelago by posing as Straw Hat Luffy, and Karibo and Korubu make it to the Sabaody Archipelago as well and become supernovas. Another point of note here as we enter the post-timeskip is that once again, through the dates provided in the Viver cards, we know the post-timeskip begins in early February of 1524. This technically means that the timeskip wasn't exactly 2 years, as in 24 months from the time the Straw Hats separated, which was in April 1522, but actually 2 years from around when their journey first began, in February. So most likely the "let's meet again in 2 years" wasn't meant as a "let's meet in exactly 24 months from now", but rather to meet again roughly once 2 years have passed, in other words, as soon as 1524 begins. And with the beginning of 1524, as 2 years have passed, everybody headed back to the Sabaody Archipelago, but it took them about a month to get there, as you may recall that some Straw Hats arrived several days before the others, with the fall ones arriving by the end of January or start of February, where the post-timeskip finally begins, with a now 19-year-old Luffy, as confirmed by the dates that Oda provided in the Viracard databook. Okay, that's enough of that, let's continue. Or on February 4th to the 6th, the Straw Hats regroup at Sabaody Archipelago and leave for Fishman Island. Upon arriving on the island, they are embroiled in a coup d'etat Cody Jones has long been planning with his new Fishman pirates. And furthermore, Charlie has a vision that Luffy will one day destroy Fishman Island. The Straw Hats fight back the new Fishman pirates during the coup, and in the meantime Vander Neck in the 9th almost destroys Fishman Island by using his powers on the Ark Noah, but thanks to Shirahoshi's powers as Poseidon, she is able to stop the Noah and save the island. With Hode's coup foiled, Luffy becomes the savior of Fishman Island. The Ryugo Kingdom is unable to make their payment to Big Mom, her Luffy offers to become Big Mom's target instead, declaring war against her once they meet in the New World. Around February the 6th, having left Fishman Island, the Straw Hats enter the New World, but are lured to Pang Hazard after receiving a distress call. On the island, Luffy meets Law, who proposes him a plan to take down one of the emperors, Kaido. This involves kidnapping Caesar and destroying the SAD production plant on the island, rescuing the children being experimented on by Caesar in the process. Caesar unleashes his renewed deadly gas Shinokuni on the island, but the Straw Hats, teaming up with Law and Smoker's G5 Marines, are able to escape and capture Caesar. Monet and Virgo attempt to stop their efforts for Doflamingo's sake, but both end up dying during the incident. Proceeding with their plan, Law gives Doflamingo an ultimatum to leave the 7 warlords in exchange for Caesar's life. At the same time, the Straw Hats meet Kinemon and Momonosuke and let them join them on their journey. 5 days after his arrival, still on February the 6th, Jack grows tired of becoming unable to make progress against the main forces and deploys a gas weapon that the Beast Pirates bought from Caesar to incapacitate them. The Mink are left poisoned and paralyzed, and Jack tortures them to get Rise's location out of them. Around February the 7th, on the news, Don Quixote Doflamingo resigns from the 7 warlords and abdicates to the throne of Dressrosa. In reality, Doflamingo used his knowledge of Imu's existence to blackmail CP0 into delivering a false report, in order to trick Law into a trap. The newspapers also reports Luffy and Law's alliance, as well as an alliance between Kid, Hawkins, and Apu to take down Shanks, though Apu is secretly working for Kaido. Also on February the 7th, in the Dressrosa incident, the Straw Hats land on Dressrosa with objective to destroy the Smile Factory while pretending to give Caesar back to Doflamingo. Law gathers with Caesar at 3 PM on Green Beat, but is lured into Doflamingo's trap. Some of the other Straw Hats are intercepted by the Big Mom pirates, who are chasing after Caesar, but they manage to escape the island together with Caesar. Luffy is sidetracked by seeing Ace's fruit being the prize of the Corrida Coliseum tournament, which many warriors from around the world have come to claim, but he reunites with Sabo, who takes his place to eat the fruit. Meanwhile, Atoy Kyros and the Tontata plan to liberate the country in Operation SOP, so the Straw Hats assist them in attempting to take down the Don Quixote family altogether. Doflamingo summons the Birdcage on Dressrosa, sending the country and its people into chaos, but the Straw Hats, with the help of the gladiators from the Coliseum, manage to overthrow the Don Quixote family, and Luffy defeats Doflamingo, liberating Dressrosa. Admiral Fujitora publicly takes blame from the incident as a step towards his plan to abolish the warlord system. Also around February the 7th, being given a report of Doflamingo's defeat, Jack immediately leaves Zou on Kaido's orders to go rescue Doflamingo, with most of his men leaving the island together with him. Meanwhile, Caribou is captured by Jinbei and handed off to the Marines, but he manages to escape. He's stranded on an island under Kyros territory and ends up leading an uprising to thank the locals who rescued him by killing Iron Boy Scotch. Death Drake captures Caribou and takes him as a prisoner to the Wano country. Meanwhile, Jinbei meets Wadatsumi and finds a poneglyph, which he takes to Big Mom as he prepares to ask her to quit her crew. Around February the 8th, early in the morning, Fujitora rolls a die to determine Luffy and Law's fate, but it turns out on their favor, so he decides to not arrest them on that day. The other Straw Hats, which include Sanji, Nami, Chopper, Brook, and Caesar, arrive in Zou but find the country destroyed after Jack's rampage. Thanks to Chopper and Caesar's efforts, they are able to rescue all Mink in the Dukedom before they succumb to the poisoned. On the same day, Kaido jumps off of Sky Island Balloon Terminal after feeling depressed that Doflamingo got captured. He once again survives, but he then goes on to fight Kid's alliance after Apu backstabbed Kid. Hawkins submits to Kaido in fear for his life, but Kid and Killer fight back and are captured. Around February the 8th to the 9th, a tea party was scheduled at Whole Cake Island. However, after discovering that his son Sanji still lived, Vince McJudge gets in talk with Big Mom to establish a marriage alliance between Germa 66 and the Big Mom Pirates by marrying off Sanji to one of her daughters. The tea party is postponed to organize the wedding. To ensure they can capture him safely, Judge requests Sanji's upcoming bounty to be changed to only alive. Around February the 9th, Fujitora rolls the die again to see if he should capture Luffy and Law, but once again, fate rests on their side. Around February the 10th, new bounties are issued for all Straw Hat pirates and those involved in the Dressrosa incident, as Luffy reaches a 500 million belly bounty. On that same day, Fujitora finally rolls in favor of capturing the Straw Hats, forcing the group to leave the island. Before leaving, Luffy helps Rebecca regroup with Kyros as she abandons her position as princess to spend time with her father. King Rikudoldo III retakes the throne of Dressrosa, with Viola remaining as the heir. The Straw Hats escape Dressrosa, but the warriors from the Colosseum swear loyalty towards them by forming the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, formed by Cavendish, Bartolomeo, Sai, Ideo, Leo, Hyrudin, and Orlambus. Jack raids the marine ships that are escorting Doflamingo, but is ultimately defeated by the combined force of Fujitora, Sengoku, and Tsuru. He manages to escape, wounded, and makes his way back to Zou. Around February the 11th, Edward Weevil takes down the AO pirates in his long search for Whitebeard's treasure, destroying a town in the process and causing about 600 casualties. Around February the 16th, Peckham's and Beige land in Zou in order to seize Sanji and Caesar. They blackmail Sanji into coming to the tea party, so he has no other choice but to go with them and leave the other Straw Hats behind. On February the 18th, the other Straw Hats finally make it to Zou and are informed on all the events thus far. Luffy decides to go after Sanji, for which he asks Peckham's for help. The Straw Hats take a break as they party at Zou over the night. Also on this day, as reported on the news the next day, the Blackbeard pirates raided Baltico, the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army, after Burgess smuggled onto Sabo's ship. The revolutionaries are able to escape, but the island is leveled. Cypher Pole arrives on the island and briefly clashes with Blackbeard, but teaches forces escape the island. On the next day, around February 19th, Kinemon and Kanjuro land on Zou after a slight delay, and are rejoiced to reunite with Raizo when the Mix tell them that he is safe. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi reconcile thanks to Momonosuke and decide to show the Straw Hats the road poneglyph within the Whale Tree, the first out of 4 they need to seek. The Ninja Pirate Ming Samurai Alliance is established with a plan to take down Kaido. Suddenly, however, Jack returns to attack the island, but Momonosuke realizes his power to order Zunisha with the voice of all things and commands the elephant to destroy Jack's fleet. With a moment of peace again, Luffy, Nami, Chopper, and Brook set for Whole Cake Island to rescue Sanji alongside Peckham's, Pedro, and Carrot. On the way out of the island, Luffy accidentally destroys all their rations for the next week, leaving the crew in danger of starvation. Around February 21st to the 24th, Sanji first meets Pudding at Cacao Island ahead of their wedding. Around February the 23rd to the 26th, starving at sea, the Straw Hats are saved after eating an armored stonefish. However, in a chance encounter with Germa, Reiju ends up saving Luffy's life after he was poisoned by eating the stonefish uncooked. On February the 26th, the Straw Hats land at Chocolate Town and meet Pudding, who agrees to help them rescue Sanji, in truth leading them into Big Mom's trap at Whole Cake Island. Meanwhile, Jimmy attempts to leave the Big Mom Pirates to join the Straw Hat Pirates, but prefers to do so secretly after Big Mom's unfair demands for leaving the crew. On the same day, the Broccoli War ends in mere hours after one side hires Germa 66 to end the conflict. The next day, February 27th, early in the morning, the Straw Hats arrive at Whole Cake Island, but are lured into the trap of of the Seducing Woods. The Straw Hats are split as Luffy and Nami enter in conflict with Commander Charlotte Cracker, fighting against him over an 11-hour battle across the night. The next day, on February 28th, Ichiji and Nishi arrive at Whole Cake Island and Judge blackmails Sanji into staying for the wedding. Luffy and Nami ultimately win their battle against Cracker, and Luffy reunites with Sanji, but driven into a corner, Sanji fights back against Luffy and refuses to return. Big Mom's revenge army marches on the two Straw Hats and seizes them, jailing them in the prison library. Meanwhile, Brook successfully steals a road poneglyph and 2 other poneglyphs from Big Mom's vault. On February 29th, which happens to be a leap day, the Tea Party incident takes place. Early in the night, after discovering Pudding's true intentions, Sanji finally regroups with Luffy at 5 AM. Reuniting with Jinbe as well, Jinbe proposes to ally with Capone Beige, who intends to assassinate Big Mom during the upcoming Tea Party. The Straw Hats and the Far-Time Pirates have a meeting at 6:30 AM to plan out the assassination plot and begin to prepare. Finally, at 10 AM, the Tea Party officially begins, where Big Mom has gathered many members of the underworld to seize the wedding union of the Big Mom Pirates and Germa, though secretly she plans to slaughter the entire Vinsmoke family at the wedding and seize their technology by force. However, the Straw Hats crash the Tea Party and successfully rescue Germa, and Jinbe officially joins the Straw Hat Pirates. Meanwhile, Beige attempts to assassinate Big Mom, but the plan fails and their escape is cut off. Through a miracle, the Tamatepako from Fishman Island explodes, causing the collapse of Whole Cake Chateau and allowing the Straw Hats to leave the island, though Pedro sacrifices his life to let them escape. Sanji works with Pudding in baking a new wedding cake to stop Big Mom's sudden hunger pang, while Luffy battles Charlotte Katakuri in the Mirror World. On the next day, March the 1st, right after midnight, Luffy defeats Katakuri. He regroups with his crew at 1 AM to escape Big Mom's territory. Jinbe and Germa briefly stay behind to help them escape, but the crew successfully leave Tot Land. Nami steals Zeus from Big Mom for herself. Following this time, Ichiji and Reijo are able to successfully rescue Nishi and Yonji from the Big Mom pirates after they got captured, allowing Germa to finally escape the Tot Land territory. They are assisted by Caesar in their escape, who joins Judge in founding Neo-Mats. The Blackbeard pirates, Kuzan and Augur, enter the Tot Land territory and kidnap Pudding due to her potential ability to read poneglyphs. In the morning newspaper, Luffy is declared as the mastermind of the Whole Cake Island incident, being proclaimed as the 5th Emperor. Luffy and Sanji are given new bounties as Luffy breaks a 1.5 billion belly bounty. The Revolutionary Army commanders, on their way to Kamabaka to regroup with the other revolutionaries, liberate the Lelouch Kingdom from the Peach Bear pirates and encourage them to take up arms. On the next day, March the 2nd, Big Mom informs Kaido that she'll be departing for the Wano country to take Luffy's head. The call is intercepted by the Marines, who remain on alert for the potential upcoming conflict. The Ryugu Kingdom, among several others, arrive at Marijoa in preparations for the reverie the next day. Princess Shirahoshi is kidnapped at Pangaea Castle by Saint Charles, wishing to make her a slave, but Saint Mosgard, who had been changed by Otohime years prior, helps protect her. At the same time, what appears to be Shanks arrives at Marijoa to inform the 5 other planets of a certain pirate. In the meantime, the revolutionaries and Bonnie have both infiltrated Marijoa. On March the 3rd, on the news, the events of the previous day are reported, mentioning the arrival of kings at Marijoa and the potential incoming conflict between Kaido and Big Mom. On March the 3rd, the 1524 Reverie begins, with the first day of the 7-day conference. Also on March the 3rd, Nekomamushi reaches Sphinx Island to recruit Marco to assist them in the battle against Kaido. That same day too, the Straw Hats that escape Whole Cake Island make landfall on the Wano country. Getting split off, Luffy meets a young starving Kurozumitama and promises her to liberate the Wano country in Ace's place. He reunites with Zoro, Kinemon and the others, but enters in preemptive conflict with Kaido, resulting in a swift defeat. The next day, on March the 4th, it's the second day of the 1524 Reverie. Luffy is jailed in the Udon prison mines following his defeat on the previous day and meets with Eustace Kid in the cells. Zoro, lost in Wano, gets in a brief conflict with the Yakuza of the Kyoshiro family after a gambling night. On the news between March the 4th to the 6th, Gecko Moria and his zombie army are reported. The news also mentions the abolishment of the warlords being brought up as a topic at the Reverie, as thanks to Fujitora, the Nefertari and Riku Kings explain the horrors of what happened to their countries in the conference. The matter will come down to a vote in the following days. On March the 5th, the third day of the 1524 Reverie takes place. And then on March the 6th, in the fourth day of the 1524 Reverie, the Reverie incident takes place. The abolition of the warlord system is approved by a majority vote. Meanwhile, the revolutionaries storm Marijoa as they declare war on the Celestial Dragons by destroying the food reserves of the Holy Land in order to put Marijoa in a resource siege. Admirals Fujitora and Ryukugyu clash with the revolutionaries, but are unable to put up much of a fight to avoid damaging the Holy Land. Zou Saga and the others are able to rescue Kuma and escape. Saint Charles attempts to kidnap Shirahoshi again, but is rescued by Sai and Leo, with Miosgar covering up for their assault. At the same time, Cobra confronts the 5 Elder Planets and the disappearance of Lily at the end of the Void Century, and ends up meeting Imu, who finally realizes that Lily was a D-Clan member. Cobra is killed for what he witnessed, but Sabo, who overheard the entire conversation, manages to escape. Wapol also witnesses the event by accident and escapes Marnie Joie, and Vivi joins him as she has now been targeted by CP0. Morgans receives all the reports of the events happening at the Reverie and prepares to publish the newspaper on the following morning. The government pays him to cover up one of the headlines, but he refuses. Morgans is also contacted by Wapol about what he witnessed. And at the prison mine, Luffy and Kid beat up Vice Warden Dobon. On the next day, March the 7th, in the 5th day out of 1524 Reverie, on the news, the events from the past 4th day of the Reverie are reported as several headlines. First, Sabo assassinates Cobra, having been framed for the murder. Second, the warlord system has been abolished by the vote. Third, attempted murder of Saint Charlotte as Saint Miosgar helps the perpetrator get away. And fourth, Princess Vivi goes missing, with Morgans actually covering up about her disappearance. On March the 7th, in the 8th Nation Revolution, revolutionaries across the world begin to praise Sabo as the Flame Emperor Entei after his supposed murder of Cobra, inspiring 12 nations across the world to rebel against the government. 8 of them are successful and declare independence, cutting off their celestial tribute. On March the 7th, Gecko Moria storms Hachinosu after Absalom, who infiltrated there some days prior, have suddenly disappeared. However, Moria realized Absalom was killed and his fruit stolen by Shiryu. Teach offers Moria to join his crew, but the latter refuses and is jailed in Hachinosu as a result. Soon after, Teach sets sails to go seize Hancock's fruit for himself. Around March the 7th to the 11th, given the disappearance of the CP5 ship at Egghead, the government sends CP7 at Egghead to investigate in their place. In a similar way, they are kidnapped by York once again and disappear without a trace. On March the 7th, Oden Kumurasaki, the new identity of Hiyori, holds a procession in the flower capital to head to Shogun Orochi's banquet. Before the banquet, CP0 visits Orochi to debate a weapons deal for the government, now that their proxy Doflamingo is gone. During the banquet, some of the Straw Hats infiltrate the feast, and Kumurasaki fakes her death in a stage incident thanks to Kyoshiro. At the same time, Sanji briefly clashes with Page 1 in the flower capital as he first dons his raid suit. Big Mom meanwhile finally arrives at the Wano country, but is intercepted at the entrance by King. Her children are unable to enter the country, but Lilin herself falls into the country's waters and washes up at the shores of Kuri, having lost her memories. The next day, on March the 8th, on the 6th day of the 1524 Reverie, an amnesiac Big Mom agrees to follow Chopper to Udon, where Queen has arrived and puts Luffy through a death game. At Ringo, Zoro confronts Kyukimaru after he stole Shusui, but they are interrupted by Komurasaki, who is being persecuted by Kamazo, or Killer. Zoro slices him down but passes out due to his hunger. Lost Crew is also jailed in order to lure him out. On March the 9th, the 7th day and final day of the 1524 Reverie, the news also report on the funeral of Komurasaki and the capture of the Witching Hour boy, who turns out to be Shimotsuke Yasuye, though he's only pretending to be a noble thief to cover up for Denjiro. Yasuye is publicly executed by Orochi, but his sacrifice helps cover the actions of the allies. Law meanwhile trades himself to be jailed in exchange for his crew to be freed, and Big Mom arrives at Udon and regains her memories, but is captured by Queen and taken to Onigashima, where she clashes with Kaido. With them absent, Luffy and his allies take over Udon, but are able to keep it a secret from Kaido's forces. On the next day, March the 10th, with the Reverie over, all the rulers return to their respective countries. Wapol and Vivi manage to escape on a ship and are rescued by Morgans, smuggling away on his R-ship. Sabo also escapes, heading to Lucia, as does Bonnie, heading to Egghead to take revenge against Vegapunk. Imu expresses a desire to use Vegapunk's Mother Flame power source to unleash the ancient weapon the government possesses to test if it does work. Imu elects to test it on the Lucia Kingdom due to its proximity. Zoro clashes with Yukimaru again in Ringo, but Komurasaki, who finally reunites with Kawamatsu, convinces Zoro to trade Shusui for Emma. On the next day, March 11th, Death Drake helps Law escape from prison to help Luffy's alliance in taking down Kaido. On the next day, March 12th, Luffy trains hard in Udon to develop his skills in order to defeat Kaido. Meanwhile, Kaido and Big Mom stop fighting and decide to ally the Beast Pirates and the Big Mom Pirates. Death Drake immediately reports the alliance to Kobe, and Rain in headquarters, brand new discusses the new alliance between Kaido and Big Mom, as informed to them by Drake. Sengoku informs the new recruits about the God Valley incident and the Rock's pirates. The government begins first deploying its new Seraphim Pacifista units, the replacement to the warlord system, then made clones of the previous members, to arrest and pursue the former warlords. In the invasion of Amazon Lily, the Marines invade Nogashima to arrest Boa Hancock, but are intercepted when the Blackbeard pirates attack to take the fruit instead. Rayleigh lands on the island and is able to defuse the situation, forcing all respective parties to leave. Teach takes 800 Marines hostage, but Kobe trades himself for all of them and is taken hostage by Blackbeard to Hachinosu. On March the 12th, the Marines attack Karaibari to arrest Buggy, but he's saved by Crocodile's arrival. However, Crocodile is seeking owed money from Buggy as he wants to fund his new organization, Cross Guild, and Buggy promises to pay him back by offering his services for his organization. Crocodile contacts Mihawk to join him in the Cross Guild, as the latter is now being hunted too. On March the 14th, the members of the Alliance regroup at Amigasa Village to oversee their current numbers and prepare their strategies. On March the 15th, Luffy returns to Amigasa Village and rests in preparation for the raid. And on March 16th, the members of the Alliance depart for Onigashima to prepare for the raid. A funeral is held for Yasuya and Pedro, and Orochi is informed by Kanjuro about the switch in ports. Finally, on March the 17th, in the raid on Onigashima, as Wano celebrates its Fire Festival, the Ninja Ming Pirate Samurai Alliance prepares its attack on Onigashima. Kanjuro reveals himself as the traitor, but his sabotage is foiled when Kinemon's mistake allowed the allies to gather and strike back. Rejoined by Jinbe just in time, the Straw Hats and their allies storm Onigashima and begin a long battle against the Beast Pirates overnight, as Kaido attempts to enact the new Onigashima plan by moving the entire island on the Flower Capital. On the rooftop, the Supernovas clash against the Emperors, and the Beast Pirates fall one by one as Sanji destroys his red suit and Zoro awakens Conqueror's Haki. Law and Kid team up to defeat Big Mom, while Momonosuke is aged by 20 years to prevent Onigashima from falling thanks to Yamato's help. In his clash against Kaido, Luffy finally awakens his fruit, allowing him to fully transform into the figure of Nika, marking the return of Joy Boy's user upon the world. Luffy defeats Kaido and liberates the Wano country, and Momonosuke rises up as the new shogun of Wano. Big Mom, Kaido, Orochi, Kanjuro, Hawkins, Death Drake, Izo, and Doji all presumably die in the incident. Around March the 24th, Luffy and Buggy are promoted as the new emperors in Kaido and Big Mom's place, with Luffy lauded for his exploits at Onigashima and Buggy being mistaken as the leader of Cross Guild. The government attempts to cover up Luffy's transformation as Nika, but Morgans decides to publish it anyway, as Luffy, Kid, and Law all receive a 3 billion belly bounty. All the other Straw Hats get bounty increases as well. On March the 24th, Luffy and Zoro finally wake up from their wounds, so the Wano country throws a big festival to celebrate the liberation of the country. Admiral Ryokugyo lands on Wano and disposes of the remaining Beast Pirates, but is stopped from taking Luffy's head by the brief arrival of Shanks, who forces him to leave the island. Meanwhile, Robin locates the Third Road Poneglyph among others and learns of Pluton's existence beneath Wano. On March the 25th, Carrot is promoted as the new king of Zou, as Inuarashi and Nekomamushi wish to stay with Momonosuke. On March 25th to 29th, growing more suspicious, the government sends a CP-8 ship at Egghead, but again it vanishes after being kidnapped by York. Around March-April, the Marines attack Sphinx Island during Marco's absence, but Weevil protects the village from intruders. The Marines request backup, with Admiral Ryokugyo arriving and taking Weevil prisoner. Around April, on the news, the beloved Vice Admiral T-Bone is killed on duty. The Marines do not disclose the truth behind his death, but he was in fact killed for his bounty, sent on him by Cross Guild to feed the starving people of the Pepe Kingdom. Around April the 2nd to the 6th, the Straw Hats leave Wano and say goodbye to their friends, marking the island as their territory. Upon leaving Wano, the Straw Hats find out about their new bounties, and Luffy shares the goal at the end of his dream with the rest of his crew. Meanwhile, in the vanishing of Lelouch, Imo unleashes an ancient weapon upon Lelouch powered by the Mother Flame York gave them, completely eradicating the island from the map and leaving a massive sinkhole in its place, just like that of Enies Lobby. Sabo barely manages to escape the island with his life alongside some villagers. Also around April 7th to 11th, the Straw Hats land on Egghead Egghead and meet Dr. Vegapunk. However, CP0, including Lucci, Kaku, and Stussy, arrive with the orders to assassinate Vegapunk, so the Straw Hats protect all the punks as they retreat in the island's labo phase. There, York tries to pick out everyone one by one, but her plans are foiled overnight, though Shaka and Pythagoras die in the process. Stussy and her Long Sleeper agent work as CP0 to help Vegapunk escape. Meanwhile, the Hare Pirates arrive at Winter Island where the Blackbeard Pirates were preparing an ambush. Lost Crew is defeated and their ship destroyed, but they were able to escape with their lives. The Kid Pirates reach Warland Elbaf, but are completely annihilated by Shanks upon attempting to attack it, eradicating the pirate crew. Shanks takes Kid's 2 red Poneglyph rubbings as he gets serious about going after the One Piece. Kuma suddenly runs away from Kabagaka and uses his powers to travel to the New World. Along the way, he is stopped by the Red Line, so he climbs all the way to Marijois, where Sakazuki attempts to stop him from entering the Holy Land, but Kuma warps once again towards the New World. Magi publicly declares the Cross Guild's intention to enter the race to seize the One Piece, much against Crocodile and Mihawk's wishes, and Sabo returns to Kamabaka after escaping Lulusha and informs Dragon and Ivankov about the events at the Reverie and Imu's existence. Also, Garp storms Hachinosu with several troops to rescue Kobe from the Blackbeard Pirates, saving many slaves from the island in the process too. Garp lets himself get captured in Kobe's place in order to let everyone else get away, falling in imprisonment to the Blackbeard Pirates. On the next day, between April the 8th to the 12th, on the news, Morgans reports of the Egghead incident, but modifies the truth with the headline, Emperor Straw Hat Luffy wages all-out war with the Marines at Egghead holding Vegapunk hostage, as well as the disappearance of Garp and Hachinosu in exchange for Kobe's safe return. In the Great Earthquake following the impact of an ancient weapon 6 days prior upon Lulusha, a series of earthquakes of higher magnitude than anything in recorded history reverberate across the world, causing massive destruction all across the planet. The resulting effect of those earthquakes causes sea levels across the world to rise by about 1 meter, leading to the loss of several islands. And finally, on that same day, in April 8th to the 12th, in the Egghead incident, as the Straw Hats capture York and follow her plan overnight, the island is besieged by some 100 marine ships, 9 vice admirals, and Admiral Kizaru to execute Vegapunk and the Straw Hat Pirates. Kizaru begins the assault and Luffy manages to stall him off, but the tides are turned once Elder Planet St. J. Garcia Saturn arrives upon the island, seizing control of the Pacifista and blocking the escape for the Straw Hats and the Punks. However, the Iron Giant reacts to the drums of liberation generated by Luffy's fruit, helping pave the way for their escape. Kuma arrives at Egghead in order to save Bonnie as well, as the story heads to its climax.